adventures, starting with American TV series. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Thank you for your decision. Perhaps because his life had hit rock bottom, Mr. Andrew is eager to get his money. The next day, with his lawyer present, the two parties signed a contract and agreed on the company transfer. Mr. Andrew quickly departed. Purchasing a fund company worth only a few $1 million wasn't a big deal. Mr. Andrew also covered the consulting firm's $15,000 brokerage fee. After paying the initial purchase price, Locke went to the Sky Fund's office and began meeting with the original fund's employees. Although Sky Fund once managed tens of millions of dollars in assets, it actually only had 6 employees. Finance is inherently a knowledge-intensive industry. Just like Warren Buffett's company, which has long had only a dozen or so employees at its headquarters, it has remained one of Wall Street's most successful firms. The company had no money on paper, but due to fierce competition in the industry, finding jobs was difficult. Even though the 6 people had applied for other positions, most of them failed to secure satisfactory positions, and the company was barely operating normally. Locke had no intention of withholding the wages owed to these people, but before that, there were some matters that needed to be determined. Picking up the black tea that Tang Wei had brewed, Locke said to the 6 people, "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Locke Lee. I'm sure you all know that Mr. Andrew bought the company to me. I'm talking to you now to confirm whether you are willing to continue working for the company." Seeing the overly youthful Locke, these people's faces showed surprise, curiosity, and sighs. Then Locke continued, "Andrew has a good eye. I've reviewed each of your resumes. They are very professional. The company has a clear division of labor and meets my basic requirements. You've worked here for so long, I don't want to hire new people and slowly run them in. So, those who are willing to stay will keep their salary for the first year. Whether there will be an increase in the future will depend on the company's performance. As for dividends, it will also depend on performance." After Locke's words, the 6 people looked at each other, and one of them stepped forward and said, "Sky Fund Company has lost its credibility and is unable to attract investment. The management fees we receive from the small amount of money we manage now aren't even enough to cover rent and salaries." Clearly, the idea of simply shaking one's body to become a subordinate simply didn't exist. These people had little respect for Locke, standing in formation simply to get their overdue wages. In the minds of many, working on Wall Street is synonymous with wealth, even surpassing even the top white-collar workers like lawyers and doctors. But in reality, aside from the few successful and wealthy, the rest of Wall Street is just ordinary white-collar workers. While to outsiders, they all boast nice cars, several $1,000 suits, and designer watches, and often sport immaculately coiffed hair, appearing like industry elites, their base salaries are modest, relying more on bonuses and benefits. During booming times, bonuses are substantial. In addition to salary, a year's work can also earn bonuses for more than a year, or even 2 or 3 years. A select few executives can receive millions of dollars in bonuses alone. This suggests that, rather than a fixed salary, those working in this industry prioritize the company's future over fixed wages. At that moment, the 6 people looked at Locke, who seemed far too young. Perhaps Locke's mature demeanor, even handsome and attractive enough, made a good first impression, but that didn't guarantee his ability to lead the company to success. For example, Ms. Mora, who had just spoken, had taken over the company's management after Mr. Andrew's family problems began. She was well aware of the company's current situation. After the stock market crash a few years ago, investors lost a significant amount of money, and Mr. Andrew's accumulated reputation and connections were all shattered. Since then, the company has struggled to attract investment, and most of the investment was from poorly cajoled investors, with small amounts barely enough to keep the lights on. Once Mr. Andrew's family troubles had distracted him from work, the company's morale was even lower, and it was practically on the verge of bankruptcy. A revival was nearly impossible. Locke had been prepared for this, but he didn't say it right away. He simply said, "I know the company's in trouble, and getting it back on track won't be easy. But just give me some time, 2 or 3 years at most, and I guarantee each of you will make hundreds of thousands of dollars." This sounded like bragging to the 6 people, so Ms. Mora continued, Do you have a ready-made source of funding? Anyone willing to invest? Fund companies survive by attracting investors and collecting management fees and dividends. Sky Fund has been declining in recent years because it's been difficult to attract high-quality investors. Americans prefer to be direct, especially when discussing business, so Ms. Moore posed the question directly. Having been prepared for these people's attitudes, Locke shrugged his shoulders and said, "This matter is company confidential. It's always a two-way choice between the company and its employees. If you'd like to stay, you can sign a one-year employment contract. If you choose to leave, I won't stop you. Of course, no matter what you choose, your back pay will be deposited into your account within a week." As soon as he finished speaking, a young man in his mid-20s turned and left, leaving behind a simple reminder to deposit his back pay. He had been looking for a new job for the past 6 months and was almost done with his next employer, so there was no need to risk staying. The remaining 5, however, hesitated for a moment before deciding to stay. Suitable jobs are hard to come by in the industry right now, and they had looked. But the jobs they were able to secure didn't pay well, and the prospects weren't great. Locke seemed confident, so he decided to stay for a while and see how the company develops. He couldn't afford to end up unemployed or struggling to make ends meet while he looked for another. After all, most of them were already in their 30s, with a lot to pay for, such as mortgages, rent, children, living expenses, and insurance. The company had been in arrears for 3 months, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. If their income dropped further, their lives would collapse. Seeing the 5 men sign their employment contracts, Locke clapped his hands. "Excellent. I believe you'll be grateful for the decision I'm about to make." He paused, then, to the curious gazes of the others, said, "Over the next month, the company will receive an investment of $120 million. Before Locke could finish, the others looked incredulous or unconvinced. Unsure how to react, they could only listen as Locke continued. "This money is my investment, managed solely by me. There are no management fees, and the dividend is 5% of the profits." These words left everyone standing there unsure how to react. After a moment, everyone gasped in surprise. It was still the 1990s, and assets worth hundreds of millions would have put Locke in the top 400 on the Forbes list. No one had expected Locke to be a billionaire, and they began to speculate about which prominent family he might be from. Tang Wei, who had been standing next to Locke, also grabbed Locke's hand in surprise, with such force that Locke even felt pain. Chapter 52 Losing Money. The over $400 million, originally inherited from the family fund, had more than doubled after Locke's recent efforts. Before arriving in New York, Locke hadn't actually planned to leak this information. However, after meeting Martin Channing, he realized that the information was no longer a secret to some, so he prepared a legal package for the unethical stockbroker. Locke's lawyers would sue for leaking customer information and issue a bill the broker could never afford. Even if the evidence was limited, the lawsuit would continue until the broker's entire fortune was exhausted in court, leaving him completely bankrupt. Even so, Locke knew that the secret was no longer a secret to many, and those who needed to know would soon know it, so he decided not to hide it anymore. Locke used the $120 million for short-term investments. The rest of the funds were invested in several target companies, becoming shareholders in them. He didn't plan to participate in the management of these companies for the time being, but rather to hold them long-term, supporting the successful management team of his previous life and ensuring their growth. Knowing they were working for a young billionaire, everyone erupted in enthusiasm. Although Locke personally managed these hundreds of millions of dollars, with no management fees, even with conservative investments, a 5% dividend was more than enough to sustain the company's operations. Crucially, this capital solidified Locke's status as a super-rich second-generation rich man in their eyes. This status also meant extensive connections. As the boss, Locke must have known many wealthy individuals, making it easier to attract investment. They were clearly mistaken. Locke didn't have any special connections at the moment, but he believed that with this $120 million, the company could generate substantial dividends solely from future investment returns. The investment returns would belong to Locke personally, to be used for further investment in target companies. The majority of the company's dividends would go towards Locke's bonuses and various benefits within the company. Later, most of Locke's expenses would be legally accounted for by the company or his personal bonuses. The remaining small portion would provide operating funds and his own bonuses. As for attracting investment, Locke wasn't worried. As his reputation spread, People would naturally draw him into the right circles, allowing him to gradually cultivate his network. This might take some time, as Locke's core business wasn't this. But a year or two would be enough time for Locke to establish connections. The key was proving his investment acumen through Sky Fund's investment. Once he saw the lucrative returns from this project, Locke could launch new projects and convince investors to hand over their existing funds to him. The terms of these projects naturally couldn't match those of Locke's own funds. Management fees and the like would be equally important. He could guarantee principal and fixed returns, and a rate of return slightly higher than that of other stable investment funds on the market would suffice. There were many investors in the U.S. who valued stable returns. Locke could then invest their money and reap lucrative returns, simply paying investors a fixed amount to build a foundation for a profitable venture. It would be a completely zero-cost venture. Regardless, the 5 employees no longer looked at Locke with suspicion. Their attitudes became respectful. "Boss, what do we do now?" Locke waved his hand. "Of course we have to get to work. Otherwise, why would I pay you? Now, give me the company's remaining client list. Besides the projects I'm personally overseeing, there's a new project, and we'll only be operating this one from now on." Locke also planned to implement a principal guaranteed fund project now. Even if he couldn't attract a significant investor, it could serve as a rehearsal. The key was to establish a good demonstration. "Let me give you a demonstration." After receiving the client list, Locke approached a desk, unbuttoned his tie and suit, and prepared to take on a major initiative. Sky Fund Company had only a dozen or so investment clients left, and there was only a piece of paper with the amount, name, bank account, contact information, and so on. Everyone watched as Locke picked up the phone and dialed a number, unsure of what he was about to do. After the call was connected, Locke said quickly, "Hello, Mr. Henry Spert? I'm sorry to bother you at this time. I'm Locke Lee, the new president of Sky Fund." No, you misunderstood. There is no problem with the funds in your name. If you insist on giving up high returns, I will arrange for someone to deposit the money into your account tomorrow." An employee was ready to laugh at Locke. Mr. Spert was a client he developed. He was an old man with a hot temper. He invested $300,000 last year and now he has lost $50,000. Every time he called, he had nothing good to say. Locke signaled everyone to be silent and pressed the speakerphone button. Then, an angry voice rang out, "You devils of Wall Street, you sons of bitches, stop trying to trick me into buying. You only want to steal my money." Without letting the other party continue, Locke interrupted, "That was in the past. Sky Fund has been acquired by a new owner, a super-rich individual, incredibly wealthy, with a net worth exceeding $1 billion. We're launching a new product that will buy stocks of oil, gas, General Motors, Boeing, and other companies, while also investing in futures and foreign exchange, guaranteeing principal through hedging. We guarantee the principal and pay a fixed annual dividend of 6%. Everyone knows that depositing money in a bank only yields a meager 1.1%, while government bonds only earn 3%. Those conservative funds will only earn 4% at most, and they can't even beat inflation. Our new product guarantees your principal against loss. If you do lose money, we are willing to compensate you, and will also pay a generous 6% annual dividend." The new boss is offering such favorable terms primarily to build a reputation and enhance the company's credibility, as well as to compensate existing customers and mitigate your losses. "I guarantee there's no more secure and cost-effective financial product in the entire United States. Ordinary investors are limited to a maximum purchase of $500,000 per person." Upon hearing about the guaranteed principal and 6% annual dividend, several employees frowned, knowing the offer was excessively generous, even higher than the interest rates on many commercial bank loans. A 6% return is understandable. Foundations like Martin Channing's typically promise annual returns of 10% to 15%. The foundation takes a 20% commission and other expenses. Of course, such investments often carry significant risk. Martin Channing's failure in Two Broke Girls stemmed from his consistent annual returns of around 10%. This is practically impossible, as such a rate of return is incredibly unbelievable. Even experienced industry professionals and established investment firms know that companies offering such returns are likely to be shady. Yet, there are always those who seek high returns and take these risks. To guarantee returns, Martin Channing resorted to fabricating false information, luring more investors into investing. He then used the money from later investors to pay the profits of earlier investors. Ultimately, the situation grew, becoming a classic Ponzi scheme. This was essentially a guaranteed profit margin, with profit sharing also included, but it wasn't explicitly stated in the contract. Instead, investors were given this impression through publicity and fabricated information. Even an annual return of more than 5% was cause for concern, let alone 10%. Locke's promise of a fixed 6% return, along with a principal guarantee, inevitably led them to suspect he was bound to lose money. Chapter 53 Investment and Placement. It's fine when the funds under management are small, but as they grow, the required capital increases dramatically. However, since they were still on the phone, none of them expressed their inner thoughts. Spielt on the other end of the line paused for a moment, then inquired, guaranteed principal, with a 6% annual dividend. Are you sure? Of course, we're absolutely sure. We've designed the most robust financial investment model. After a year, someone will contact you and you can choose to withdraw your principal and interest or continue investing. However, if you continue investing, the dividends may not be as high. We're currently building our reputation, so future dividends will be between 5% and 5.5%. Because you're a regular customer, you're eligible for this discount. Hedge funds weren't that popular back then, and Locke had already prepared a detailed explanation. Those in the industry could understand the principles, but to outsiders, it sounded quite sophisticated. His previous statement was intended to create an image of strength, and then to impress the other party with a promise of guaranteed principal and fixed returns. Mr. Spilt was already tempted, but still asked cautiously, "Why haven't I heard of this product before?" Locke didn't even think to answer. The company has a new owner. Mr. Andrew had family problems and no longer had the heart to run the business, so they sold it to the new owner. If you want to withdraw your investment, that's no problem. We've already received a total of $20 million from investors who are interested in our investment model and are ready to increase their investment in the future. You want to withdraw your investment first? No problem, it will be in your account by next week at the latest. You know, these banks are not very efficient. Locke didn't care about the withdrawal of investment, because he could sense that the other party was extremely tempted. Sure enough, before he could say anything else, the other party paused, and then said, "Your name is Locke, right? Absolutely no loss, and a 6% annual dividend. Yes, our new owner has promised to make up the difference if we don't meet the requirements. Okay, I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow. And there's a maximum of $500,000 per person? Can't we have more?" After hearing this, Locke raised his eyebrows. "I'm sorry, Mr. Spurt, for ordinary investors, the maximum limit of personal investment is $500,000. If you consider it, we will explain our investment model to you in detail." After chatting for a few more sentences, Locke hung up the phone, looked at the eyes of several people in the room, and said with a smile, "Why, are you afraid of encountering a Ponzi scheme? I myself have invested $120 million in the company's account. Even if all of it is used to pay dividends, you don't have to worry." After hearing this, these people did a quick calculation. $120 million, unless the funds raised reach $2 billion, there is no need to worry about not being able to pay the first phase of dividends. In a short period of time, it is an impossible task for the company to get so much investment, or even 1/10 of it. As for Locke himself losing money because of playing too big, they don't care much. Now Locke's image in front of them is still that of a rich second generation who is ignorant of the sky and the earth and wants to start a business. Locke did not intend to talk too much about this. "Okay, next I will give you some information on new projects and hedge fund concepts. You must read them carefully, and then use the relevant information to attract investment. The project's main investment is divided into two parts. The main part is company stocks, and the other part is futures and foreign exchange markets." Locke began to arrange the tasks. Tang Wei listened quietly beside him. Watching him speak with ease and answer questions with confidence, he had an inexplicable feeling that Locke might actually succeed. So for the next half-month, Locke and Tang Wei worked hard at Sky Fund during the day, and at night they would sneak into Trinity Church to move the treasure. The new company needed accounting audits and various systems needed to be improved. Besides expanding the storage space, the rest of the treasure was stored in a rented warehouse in the suburbs. Besides gold coins and jewelry, the larger and more valuable treasures were the parchment scrolls and documents of archaeological and historical value, as well as numerous bronze, stone, and gold statues and artworks. Locke would move most of these items, leaving only a few large works of art. Locke thought it would be best to leave them there. He would definitely find a way to transfer the items he obtained, but short-term transportation would not be a problem. After obtaining these treasures, Locke felt a sense of emptiness. It was mainly because once something becomes too much, people tend to lose interest in it. At this point, Locke's wealth had already placed him at the top of the pyramid. Not to mention the numerous artworks that were difficult to value, the sale of his white and pink diamonds would be enough to significantly increase his funds. As for the gems, he would, of course, preserve them and use them in crafting magical items once his magical prowess reached a sufficient level. Many magical items, not just rings, would greatly enhance their power if they were made with fine gems. Artificial gems simply couldn't match natural gems in this regard. With these gems, once his alchemical skills improved, he could craft all sorts of equipment. While Locke might sell the diamonds, artwork, or gold in his hoard, he wouldn't sell the natural gems. As for Sky Fund, Locke had hired a new employee, returned a small number of withdrawing investors, and transferred the promised $120 million to the company's account for operations. He had also begun attracting new investment, and the new project currently managed over $9 million. While the amount wasn't large, Locke believed that as his reputation spread, more and more investors would be willing to invest. With a company like this, and several talented individuals under his command, Locke could create separate overseas accounts whenever he had time, making it easier to conceal his rapidly growing assets. In the future, he could display his publicly available assets as needed. Tang Wei also joined the company as Locke's assistant. The salary wasn't high, $150 a week for the internship and $350 a week for the full-time position. However, the $2,000 living allowance Locke had promised remained intact, and she would receive the same bonuses as other employees at the end of the year. Tang Wei's daily duties consisted of helping Locke with documents and other odd jobs. Locke arranged for her to study with Ms. Moore in her free time, and she was very satisfied with Locke's arrangements. With the company acquired, Locke needed a place to stay in New York. Tang Wei's apartment was still too small. He didn't plan to buy a large house in New York, but rented a hotel apartment a few hundred meters from the company to use as a temporary shelter. The new apartment, approximately 130 square meters, had 2 rooms and was decorated in a European style. The living room was spacious, with dark red floors and dark blue curtains. The furniture was all new, the coffee table, dining table, and cabinets were all crafted from golden camphor wood. From the living room window, one could see the bank across the street, with Wall Street right next to it. Schools and supermarkets were out of the question, as they weren't particularly practical for Locke. The new apartment wasn't as close to Columbia University as the old one, so Tang Wei still lived there, deciding where to stay when Locke returned to New York. He hadn't considered buying a house in New York City. After all, he'd be attending Princeton for the next few years, not living in the city. The house he bought in the nearby Wisteria County town of Fairview wasn't a mansion, but a typical suburban single-family home. The residents were mostly middle-class and better off, but his house was slightly larger than his neighbors. Fairview was only a half-hour drive from the school, making it very convenient for students to attend and for the Swansons to find a temporary guardian. Barry declined Monica's offer to become Peggy's temporary guardian, as she lived in New York and wouldn't be able to travel to the school for emergencies. Chapter 54 Billiards. Hi, Locke. Monica, returning from the restroom at the bar downstairs across from Tang Wei's apartment, saw Locke standing next to Chandler and greeted him. Hi, Monica. Locke, holding a pool cue, watched Chandler take aim. With one swing, he nearly knocked the ball off the table. You don't seem as good as you boast, Chandler, Locke shrugged, standing by the pool table with his cue. Really? Let me see your skills, Chandler shrugged. I'm sorry, Locke, I can't help with that temporary guardianship you mentioned, Monica said as Locke played. Pop, Locke hit a shot, finding the angle, and replied, nothing. I didn't think it through. New York is a bit far from Princeton University, even though it was just a phone call. I can tell the Swansons are very kind. I'm just a little sorry. I hope they can find a suitable temporary guardian in Fairview, Monica continued. I hope so, Locke chatted as he continued hitting the ball. After all, it's in the suburbs. I'm sure I'll find a suitable family. By the way, Locke, what have you been up to lately? Watching Locke raise his cue, the ball sinking into the holes one by one with a clatter of his strikes, Chandler sensed a potential loss and tried to distract him with more conversation. It's mainly work. I found a position at a financial investment firm, Locke said casually. Financial investment firm? Wow, you actually managed to get a summer internship at a Wall Street firm. That's impressive. Chandler was also surprised. Maybe I'm just good at math. It's quite useful when doing financial analysis, Locke said calmly. Of course, it also applies to golf. What? Hearing this, Chandler watched Locke near the end of his perfect score and could only marvel at Locke's skill. Angle, distance, force, as long as the calculations are accurate enough, you can achieve the desired result. With that, Locke swung his cue, and as the last ball went into the hole, he won the round. Looks like I've won, Locke said to Chandler. You'll buy the first drink, all right. Chandler shrugged, glanced at Locke, and then followed his gaze, noticing three attractive, stylishly dressed girls chatting and laughing behind Locke, not far from the pool table. Let's toast, one of the girls raised her glass. Let's toast to Rachel. Next year, this beautiful lady will be the wife of Dr. Barry, the dentist. After setting down her glass, Rachel smiled modestly. I think it's time to show off my diamond ring again. She extended her left hand and slipped a large diamond ring onto her ring finger. Ah, the three exclaimed in a cacophony, almost grating voice. That's amazing, another girl exclaimed enviously. It's like having a lifelong boyfriend. Rachel's face froze. She was only 22, the age to enjoy a good time, and she was the kind of girl who had been beautiful since childhood and always had a fun time. The reason they got engaged so early was that her fiancé was a doctor. Having a doctor father, she had always harbored a special affection for doctors, and she readily accepted his proposal. But the thought of never having the fun she'd had in high school and college again made her hesitate. As if sensing Rachel's mood, the girl who had initially offered her well wishes asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know," Rachel said with a troubled tone. "Maybe the thought of being with Barry for the rest of my life has left me feeling uncertain. And I'm looking for a final indulgence to say goodbye to the past." Chandler, who had been keeping an eye on the situation, heard this and unconsciously quickened his rubbing of his pool cue. His attention shifted from the set balls to a fixed gaze on Rachel's back. It seems everyone wants to be a thief, Locke chuckled to himself as he glanced at the newly appeared task, noticing Chandler's state of mind. "Rachel, stop it, Rachel, you're so mean." Both of her companions thought Rachel was joking, but she said seriously, "I'm serious. I think I need a pure, meaningless workout with the next guy I see." Before she could finish her words, Chandler suddenly dropped the white ball in his hand. Watching the ball roll away, Chandler straightened his expression. Just as he was about to walk towards Rachel and the others, he saw someone ahead of him pick up the billiard ball. Chandler couldn't help but jump, his mind racing. Then he noticed Rachel and the other two were staring intently at Locke. "Wow, he's so handsome." The girl across from Rachel couldn't help but cover her mouth as Locke approached. Rachel looked back and froze in her tracks. Her heartbeat suddenly quickened, her breath stagnating for a moment. A thought crossed her mind, is this God's will? Smiling at Rachel, Locke, in a good mood, accepted the 50 potential points for completing the mission. Although it wasn't much, it meant that as the storyline began, even if it was just a flashback, Locke could trigger quests and gain potential points. Rachel, still in her youthful and invincible state at this moment, was truly beautiful. He handed the ball to Chandler, who was still standing there with a hopping expression, and reminded him, "Dude, hurry up and tee it up." After a long moment, Chandler glared at Locke fiercely. "Thank you for giving me my ball back, otherwise I would have been short of one." Faced with classic Chandler self-deprecation, Locke shrugged his shoulders. "Let's continue." Seeing that Locke didn't look at Rachel much, Chandler felt a little relieved, thinking that Locke probably didn't mean to disrupt his fun, but he still couldn't help but laugh at himself. "Are you sure you're not going to continue playing just to spank me?" Locke was speechless. With such lewd words, it was no wonder that Ross had never been doubted when he said he was gay in front of Carol. After all, what he said in normal times was too easy to be misunderstood. The two returned to the pool table, Rachel's eyes still fixed on Locke. "Did you see that?" "Wow, yeah, he's really handsome," the two girls chimed in. The girl who had made the initial toast had a thought, "Rachel, you're not really." "I don't know." Rachel was already incredibly moved. If it were before, she would have gone right for it. She believed no one could resist Rachel Green's charm. But now he was engaged, and crucially, with two friends sitting right next to him, she could only speak hesitantly. "I'm already engaged to Barry, but what I just said, I wonder if it was a revelation from God. Do you really believe in God? The girl asked with a hint of disdain, looking at Locke, an idea beginning to take shape in her mind. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. You really know how to enjoy it. Noticing Rachel's hesitation and seemingly giving up, Locke felt a faint sense of regret. After all, she was America's sweetheart from the 90s, and her looks were still quite impressive. But he wasn't in a rush. He thought he'd meet her again in a year at most, and he could find a way to try again then. It would be a while before Ross and she became a couple, and Rachel had had boyfriends before, so he figured Ross wouldn't mind. After giving up, Rachel, still feeling a bit reluctant, glanced over, then suddenly spotted a familiar face. Monica, who was watching Locke and Chandler play basketball and casually chatting, was startled. She turned her head, looked, and after a moment's pause, exclaimed, "Oh my God, Rachel, Monica." Rachel boldly approached and hugged Monica, then spontaneously placed her hand, adorned with a diamond ring, before Monica's eyes. "Oh my God, you can't even see the crash side of the Titanic," Monica, who had been Rachel's sidekick for many years as a child, tactfully complimented. With this compliment, Rachel's mood brightened. She fiddled with the diamond ring, a hint of pride in her reserved expression. "Thank you. His name is Barry, and he's a doctor." "Wow," Monica said, understandingly. "It seems your childhood dream has finally come true. You used to have a doctor dad to take care of you, and now you have a doctor fiancé. Maybe you'll have a doctor son in the future." "Thank you," Rachel rejoiced. She then asked Monica, "By the way, how are you? Do you have a partner?" "Not yet," Monica said, glancing at Locke. With such a handsome man right in front of her, how could Monica ignore him? But in her eyes, Locke was Tang Wei's boyfriend. Even though Locke had said he was single and wouldn't have a steady girlfriend, and Tang Wei had said he didn't care about Locke, she still held back. After all, Locke hadn't taken the initiative, and they didn't see each other very often. Happiness is all about comparison. Seeing her childhood friend without a boyfriend, Rachel's happiness was almost overwhelming, but she feigned, "It's nothing, really, I know," Monica said, a little speechless. After these few words, the air suddenly fell silent. The two stared at each other for a moment, awkwardly unsure what to say next. Finally, Monica gestured toward the pool table and said, "Then I'll go find my friend." "Your friend?" Rachel turned to Locke, her previous vanity seemingly dissipating instantly, her mind still reeling from the previous revelation. Monica knew Rachel intimately, and seeing her expression, she teased, "Do you want me to introduce you to her?" "No thanks," Rachel waved her hand, feigning reserve. "That's true." Unexpectedly, Monica changed the subject. "After all, you're engaged now, so this wouldn't be a good idea." The hidden meaning in her words made Rachel's face freeze, and she took note, wondering why she hadn't seen her so mean before. Outwardly, Rachel remained enthusiastic and said, "Look, next time I come over, how about we have lunch together?" "Sure," Monica nodded in agreement, looking delighted. "Okay, bye." Rachel and Monica, a heartfelt sister, parted reluctantly. They couldn't help but glance at Locke one last time before reuniting with their two companions and leaving the bar. After Rachel left, Monica approached Chandler and Locke and said, "I bet I'll never see her again. Fate is complicated." Locke shrugged. "Believe me, I know Rachel better than anyone," Monica said. "We were friends growing up, but she hasn't contacted me since she went off to college." Okay, Chandler, understanding her assertive nature, changed the subject. "By the way, Locke, when are you going to see your new home?" "Probably in 4 or 5 days," Locke said. "I need to go there early to pack up and wait for the Swansons to come and select a suitable temporary guardian." "Won't that interfere with your work in New York?" Monica asked. "Of course not. It's just some data-related work. I just need to complete the documents and hand them over to whoever needs them." Not wanting to be too prominent in front of Chandler and the others, or to avoid creating a sense of distance, Locke didn't elaborate on his situation. As is customary in the U.S., Chandler and Monica didn't press the issue. The three chatted for a while before Locke left the bar. A few days later, Locke and Tang Wei left New York and drove to Fairview. The house Locke had bought wasn't very large, just a single-family house of just over 200 square meters, 2 stories, with 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, a separate dressing room, a garage, and a small swimming pool. Upon arrival, the two of them took a tour of their new home. The house itself wasn't expensive, but the decor was excellent. Locke had spent over $1 million on renovations, nearly doubling the price of the house. After viewing the house, Alice's face was filled with excitement. Her dream had always been to own a beautiful house like this one. I love the backyard pool. I can go back to New York a few days later. Locke rolled his eyes. It's only a 5x5 square, but it's heated. If you like, you can go take a dip right now. The house was just a frame after purchase, and Locke hired a designer to design the layout and decor. The pool was small because he didn't particularly enjoy swimming. This kind of villa naturally focuses on home comforts, not style, just practicality. Tang Wei's eyes lit up. He first found the switch to heat the pool, then stowed his belongings in the room. He couldn't wait to experience the backyard pool. Shaking his head, Locke said to Tang Wei, "Don't worry. At least change into your swimsuit first." While Tang Wei excitedly began to try out the temperature-controlled pool, Locke began preparing dinner with the ingredients he had brought. Since it was their first day, Locke felt it was time for a bit of romance, so he chose a bottle of red wine and prepared a steak. The hired servants wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, so Tang Wei was busy enjoying the small backyard pool. Locke had prepared dinner. Grilling steak wasn't a difficult task, and even with his culinary skills, which were nearing the end of his intermediate experience bar, Locke's steak tasted quite good. He arrived in the backyard with his wine and steak, and found Tang Wei sitting on steps beneath the water, specially designed for enjoying a bath. The pool wasn't large, making it comfortable to roll over, but it ended at the end. The key was that you could lie in it like a bath, looking up at the starry sky. Placing the wine and steak on a tray by the pool, Locke said to Tang Wei, "All right, come and eat first." The tray was a folding, curved wooden board, just wide enough for one person to sit on, allowing them to reach the food and drinks. Tang Wei, enjoying Locke's service for once, beamed with happiness. "I didn't expect it to be this way. You really know how to enjoy yourself," Locke smiled. Then sat down in the warm water, gazing at the western sky and chatting casually with Tang Wei. She'd been incredibly busy these days. Locke had offered her an assistant position, but she'd been learning from Ms. Mura, the current manager of Sky Fund. After a busy day, she'd have to deal with Locke's energetic energy at night, leading to deep sleep every night. Now, finally, she had a chance to relax, casually eating steak, sipping red wine, and chatting with Locke. She felt like these days were truly relaxing and beautiful. Chapter 56: The Arrival of Peggy's Family. Before they knew it, Locke and Tang Wei were discussing his novel, The Arcane Throne. 3 volumes have already been published, roughly 1/3 of the total length after Locke's adaptation. Privately, Locke has already finished the novel. He hasn't deliberately rushed its release schedule, as it needs time for its popularity to spread. According to Locke, a volume every 6 months or so is just right. Locke is currently considering his own new novel, which will likely also be in the Western fantasy genre, allowing him to release 2 novels simultaneously. He considered the new novel for a long time and ultimately settled on Lord of the Mysteries, a masterpiece by an author Locke greatly admired in his past life. This novel, with its Cthulhu elements, is perfectly suited for the Western world and holds immense potential. With 22 paths and 220 classes, there's a wealth of potential for exploration with dedicated effort. Once the novel becomes popular, Locke will be able to write more stories within the same world, beyond the plots of the previously published novels. If the response is positive, he could even create a vast and unique fantasy universe. Future adaptations into comics, movies, and television series would bring even more prestige, allowing Locke to tap into even more potential. Tang Wei found it inconceivable that a billionaire like Locke could still devote so much of his time to writing. As far as she knew, Locke had recently invested $120 million in Sky Fund, and had easily made a $10 million profit through foreign exchange trading. With wealth coming so easily, it was hard to imagine Locke spending more time writing than researching financial news. Even though Locke received at least $100,000 in royalties each quarter, the difference was still significant. "Writing is my hobby, and it brings me more joy than making money," Locke explained. After answering Tang Wei's question, Locke continued, "By the way, tomorrow is the weekend. and the Swansons will be arriving tomorrow afternoon. I'm planning to throw a party and invite the neighbors to celebrate our move and let the Swansons get to know them. Both Easterners and Americans love to celebrate after moving into a new home. Easterners invite friends to their homes for a meal, known as a warm house, wenju, while Americans hold a party, inviting friends and neighbors. Tang Wei was also very interested and agreed immediately. I can prepare some Chinese food. I've contacted a party company and a chef, so we don't have to worry about it. But if you like, you can prepare some snacks tomorrow morning and we can take them to visit the neighbors together. The next morning, Locke changed into his sportswear and went out for a run. Tang Wei got up and prepared snacks, ready to visit the neighbors together when Locke returned. Hi, hello. Locke ran around the street and was about to return home when a long-haired woman stood in front of her room and greeted him. Hello. Locke paused and nodded to her. I'm Susan, a resident here. Are you new here? Susan asked. Yes, I live diagonally across the street. Locke pointed to his house. So you're the mysterious resident, Susan said. For a few months now, I've been seeing workers coming in and out of the house doing renovations and furniture being moved in. I finally see you. Did you move in with your wife? No, I live here with a friend, Locke said. I bought this place mainly for the convenience of school. School? Yes, Princeton University, Department of Mathematics. Wow, it's a very good school, Susan exclaimed. I didn't expect you to be so young. I thought you'd already graduated. Locke looked young, but his mature demeanor gave him a lot of points, which is why Susan thought he must have just gotten married and moved here. That's nothing, Locke said with a smile. Nice to meet you, but I have to go back to make breakfast. No problem, go ahead. I have to make breakfast for my daughter too, Susan nodded. My daughter, Julie, is still in high school. I'd like to introduce you to each other someday. It would be my honor. After chatting with Susan, Locke returned to his residence. He had watched the American TV series Desperate Housewives in his previous life, so when he was choosing a place to live near the university, he finally chose this place to see if it could trigger any quests. After returning home and having breakfast, Locke and Tang Wei, carrying their prepared snacks, visited the neighbors one by one, particularly getting to know the four main families of the plot. That afternoon, the Swanson family arrived in town with their belongings. Barry and Linda needed to check out Fairview Town before finding a suitable temporary caregiver for Peggy nearby. There are 5 rooms in total. Besides the master bedroom and the study, you can choose any of the other 3. After helping the Swansons move their luggage from the taxi to the room, Barry introduced Tang Wei. Oh, this is Alice, my friend. Hello. Barry and Linda greeted Tang Wei and began to survey the surroundings. The house is beautifully decorated, thank you. I hope Peggy likes it. Locke patted Peggy on the shoulder. Why don't I show you the rooms and pick one you like? I'm sure Peggy will like it. It looks like you've invested a lot of money. Barry had no idea Locke had inherited a multimillionaire fortune, but he knew Locke had made some money writing books and investing in stocks, and he assumed he'd invested all of it in the house. After all, we'll be living here for a long time, so we've got to make it comfortable and enjoyable, Locke said with a smile. That's a good point. Perhaps I can refer to it next time I renovate my house. Barry, a dentist, earns a good salary and is considering moving to a better house. Perhaps I can give you the designer's phone number. Thank you very much. By the way, we're having a party tonight and have invited the neighbors. You can talk to them and see if there's anyone suitable to be Peggy's temporary guardian. That's a good idea, Barry said. Rather than someone recommended by an agency, it would be best if we could choose someone who's well respected in the neighborhood. After touring the rooms, Peggy finally chose a bedroom on the 2nd floor, separated from Locke's room by a study. The Barrys chose a room on the 1st floor to rest. After all the travel, the Swansons needed some rest to recharge their batteries for the evening's party. Barry and Linda would stay here for the next few days to get to know the area better and ensure Peggy's future here would be smooth sailing. Chapter 57 Discussion of Temporary Guardians. Most of the guests arriving that evening were neighbors from the same street, with a few from the next street over as well. Americans' lives are filled with countless parties, large and small. As the host, Locke's primary responsibility was to provide the venue and drinks, or perhaps to liven up the atmosphere. As a host, it's impossible to meticulously care for every guest. How they enjoy their time is their own. This time, there were quite a few people, and thankfully, they'd hired a professional party company to set up the party, saving Locke from having to worry about the preparations, as otherwise, he wouldn't have had enough time. Tang Wei, dressed in a dull little black evening gown, stood beside Locke, addressing each guest. "I'm sorry, Mr. Van de Kamp, there are so many people here tonight. Please forgive me if we're not well received." "No problem, the food and wine are excellent," Mr. Van de Kamp said, savoring his champagne. "Also, the house is absolutely beautiful. He is the husband of Bree, one of the 4 housewives in the story. According to the plot, he will die in the future from a heart attack and the counterfeit medication he was prescribed." "Thank you. The academic atmosphere in Princeton is very intense, so I wanted to live in a relaxed community where I could relax and unwind. I also hope that Andrew and Daniel will have the opportunity to attend top universities in the future," Bree said with a polite smile. "I've always held them to very high standards, but it seems they need to work harder." To those around her, she was the perfect wife, but Mr. Van der Kamp felt their life was dull and passionless, and he was already considering divorce. Her words also made her 2 children, who were standing nearby, somewhat impatient, with unhappy expressions on their faces. "Hello, Mr. Van der Kamp and Ms. Bree," Barry said, greeting them with a glass of champagne. Bree Van der Kamp was the family Barry considered a suitable temporary guardian. Based on the information Locke had provided about the surrounding families, Bree had a very good reputation among the town residents. Seeing Barry's arrival, Locke quickly excused himself and began chatting with Mr. Solis. The most beautiful of the 4 housewives in the story was Mr. Solis's wife, Gabrielle, a former model. Their relationship was currently at a low point. Mr. Solis, constantly working overtime, neglected his beautiful, young wife. Lonely Gabrielle then took up with John, the family gardener. This wasn't surprising. For couples like this, their marriages were often seen as a transaction from the outset. If the husband ran into financial difficulties, or if the wife became lonely and unfaithful, divorce was common. Mr. Andrew, who sold Sky Funds, and his 3rd model wife were a prime example. The Solises did face various challenges, but surprisingly, they both turned around and lived happily ever after. Locke had initially had some feelings for Gabrielle. After all, she was the only one of the 4 wives who met Locke's aesthetic standards. But with that in mind, he gave up, unwilling to disrupt a couple's potential long-term relationship. He also spotted another target at the party, a woman from the next block. Her husband, Mr. Ipez, was a white man in his 60s, muscular, but his hair was beginning to gray with age. Having made a fortune in the construction business early on, he could have moved to a wealthy area, but having grown accustomed to living there, he decided to stay and retire. His wife is from Brazil, reportedly someone he met while traveling there. She speaks with a slightly strange accent, is 26 years old, and has a striking figure and appearance. A classic example of an older man and younger wife, Locke met this woman, Mana Ipez, while on his morning run. After chatting with her, he invited her to a party. Mana's figure rivals Gabrielle's, and her eyes are incredibly alluring. Marrying an older man at such a young age, according to online jokes, is a move many beautiful women take, like the nun Leonard met at a school donation gala in The Big Bang Theory. In her youth, she relied on her beauty and proven skills to successfully marry a wealthy man. Upon his death, she inherited a fortune and then used her wealth to date young men. Moved by her words, Leonard wanted to experience the techniques she described for trapping wealthy old men. After a night of hard work, the exhausted Leonard successfully secured $1 million investment and, for the first time, earned Sheldon's praise for his contributions to science. He met with Mr. Solis to discuss fund investments, casually promoting the Sky Funds projects, and the lively party concluded. The party lasted from 7 to a little after 9, when the guests began to disperse. By the time everyone had mostly left, the living room and yard were a mess. The company that had arranged the party would clean up and take away the bottles, empty plates, and floral arrangements. Locke sat down with the Swansons to discuss the matter. "I think Mrs. Bree is a great choice. She's well-dressed and well-spoken, and the food she brought was delicious, all homemade, and she's very strict with her children," Barry said. Peggy disagreed, shaking her head. "I think it's just the surface we see, Dad. I don't know if you've noticed, but Andrew and Daniel don't like their mother. I looked at their grades, and they were not much better than monkeys in the zoo." At this, Peggy shrugged. She was an extremely intelligent girl, and at some point, she developed an interest in psychology. She loved observing people, and she quickly discovered some hidden problems in the Van der Kamp family. "Really?" Barry looked at Locke. "Peggy has some truth to her," Locke said. From what I understand, Mrs. Bree is very strict with her children, but perhaps her methods are flawed, leading to their rebellious nature. It does seem to be a problem. Linda, do you think it's appropriate? Barry looked at his wife. I think Miss Susan is very good. She seems warm and kind, and has a good reputation among the neighbors. The key is that her daughter is very good. I chatted with Julie for a while and found that she is a very sensible girl. She is still in high school. I heard that she always gets A's and even received a scholarship. And Lynette is also a very serious and responsible person, but she already has 4 children at home. With so many children to take care of, she may not have more energy to be Peggy's temporary guardian. After listening, Peggy said, I haven't had much contact with Susan, but Julie is really good. I like her very much. Besides, I don't need any special care. Anyway, I am usually at school, and Locke is there when I come back. Barry nodded. Okay, let's not draw conclusions for the time being. In addition to having more contact, we also need to ask each other's opinions. The key is that Peggy likes. Chapter 58, Sounds That Reach the Ears. 2 days after the party, Locke escorted Tang Wei back to New York. He needed Tang Wei's help to better manage Sky Fund, and Tang Wei also wanted to learn more at the company. They left in the afternoon. After returning to New York for dinner, the two of them headed to the bar where Monica and the others often gathered, where they immediately spotted Ross. Hey, Ross, isn't Carol here with you? Tang Wei asked. No, she's out with some friends, Ross explained. I felt she wasn't happy a while ago, so I told her she needed good friends. I have Monica, Chandler, Phoebe, and your friends. Being together always keeps me optimistic, and nothing can get me down. I encourage her to go out and meet new people, and now she's hanging out with friends regularly. Really? Reflecting on the story, Locke looked meaningfully at Ross, who seemed somewhat smug. Of course, I'm a doctor, Ross said, shaking his head. Locke smiled, but said nothing. Even in the scientific community, even among the average person, a PhD in archaeology specializing in dinosaurs was considered far inferior to a PhD in medicine. After receiving his doctorate, Ross began boasting relentlessly. Every time Locke met him, Ross would inevitably bring up his doctorate in front of his wife's friends, intentionally or unintentionally. Do you know why both doctor and doctor are called doctor? This wine tastes good. I celebrated by drinking it when I got my doctorate. Hey, funny thing, when I was getting my doctorate, he kept on talking until everyone, unable to bear it any longer, gave him a stern scolding before he finally stopped. Ross still felt a little aggrieved. After all, this was the proudest thing in his life. From now on, people would call him Dr. Geller, so what was wrong with a few more words? So who was he going out with? It wasn't some man, was it? Monica asked maliciously. Of course not, Ross said confidently. I've seen her. Her name is Susan. She's a girl, he emphasized the word girl, a girl. Locke glanced at Ross again. It seemed like there was a chance to give Dr. Geller an eco-friendly hat. Perhaps it would help him wake up sooner. By the way, Joey, how are you guys getting along now that you've moved into Chandler's apartment? Instead of continuing to linger with Ross, Locke turned to greet Joey, the handsome Italian guy Monica had described as speaking with such charisma. Great. Chandler and I have similar tastes. We both love to drink beer and watch those scantily clad beauties running for the camera, you know. Of course I understand. Locke clinked his glasses with Joey. Mountains gathering like mountains, waves raging like waves, that's the ultimate aspiration for many men. That's right, Chandler agreed. He'd originally wanted to hire the photographer whose sister was a porn star, but the elderly man living downstairs had thwarted his plans, forcing him to settle for the next best thing. But now his frustration had dissipated. You're so lucky. It's a shame I have to find a new roommate now. Monica glared at Phoebe with a hint of frustration. Phoebe shrank back, feeling a bit guilty. She couldn't stand Monica's obsessive-compulsive behavior, and she didn't dare to directly confront the competitive Monica about moving out. In the end, she resorted to emptying the space piece by piece, using the method of ants moving away. It wasn't until today that Monica realized Phoebe's bedroom was completely empty. Monica was in a bad mood, even linking it to her boyfriend troubles. But Ross didn't seem to care. Come to think of it, Locke, you're only 18. Is it okay to hang out in bars all the time? If he doesn't hang out with us in bars, is he hanging out with us in cafes? Chandler scoffed. As the date for the bar's conversion to a cafe approached, Their gatherings increased. Everyone laughed in agreement, feeling they wouldn't hang out in a cafe. Locke, understanding all this, chuckled, saying that soon learn the true meaning of the scent of fragrance. It doesn't matter if it's a bar or a cafe, it's who you're with that matters. Locke's right. Phoebe's voice suddenly rose. I'm happy when I'm with my friends. Tang Wei didn't care about that. She was focused on what Monica had just said. Monica, you said you wanted a roommate. Yes. Monica took a sip of her wine. Are you interested in Locke? Not Locke, but me, Tang Wei explained. My apartment lease is about to expire, and Locke rents an apartment in New York, but it's a bit far from campus, making it inconvenient for school. Plus, Locke only comes here on weekends, so I thought maybe I could move in. At least the rent would be lower, and if I get up late in the morning, I wouldn't have to worry about making breakfast. Of course, Monica said immediately. Unlike the stingy Ross, Monica was always generous with her friends. For example, when Joey was hungry, he'd often come to Monica's apartment for food, and she never said anything. So the two began to discuss when to move, and they planned to ask Locke and others to help. I think you're too lazy to clean the apartment, Locke saw right through Tang Wei's thoughts. With Monica, who suffers from obsessive-compulsive disorder, around, there was no need to worry about cleaning the living room or kitchen. All he had to do was take care of his own room, and Monica would take care of everything else. Who's the problem with me now? Besides classes, I have to go to the office every time I have free time. I don't even have any free time at all. Tang Wei rolled his eyes at Locke. Even weekends I have to work overtime to process company documents. It's pretty good to find a company while I'm in college, Chandler said. And it's a Wall Street financial firm, but it won't affect your studies, will it? No, Ms. Moore is very kind to me and allows me to prioritize schoolwork, Tang Wei shrugged. The only problem is that I have to work overtime to process documents on weekends, which means I have very little free time. Yeah, it seems someone will feel the pain of working women before me, Chandler said with his usual fierce words. Come to think of it, it was quite wise for Tang Wei to choose to live out when he went to college, Ross interjected. After all, the dorms aren't very soundproof, so living on your own is the only way to get some rest, Chandler laughed knowingly, while Monica rolled her eyes. Joey and Phoebe didn't immediately get the joke. Joey joined in the laughter, while Phoebe looked bewildered. American university students tend to be more open and playful than in high school, especially since the men's and women's dorms are often not separated, which makes things even more likely to happen. If you're not careful, everyone in the dorm will start to experience physical vibrations, not just in the bunks. Because the soundproofing is poor, the noise from the neighbors is often heard. This was another reason why Locke chose to live out instead of on campus. In such an environment, it's really hard to concentrate on studying. Chapter 59 Little Hubby. Locke was actually pleased with Tang Wei moving in with Monica, as it would help strengthen his relationship with her and her family, facilitating the triggering of quests. Locke lived in Fairview Town and was busy with school, only getting together on weekends. He also spent most of his time studying. If Tang Wei moved in, Locke would be able to learn more about their activities, spending more time together, and naturally, more opportunities to trigger quests. Watching Monica and Tang Wei enthusiastically discussing the move, Joey said somewhat angrily, "Why didn't I seize this opportunity? Because you chose me," Chandler shrugged. This made everyone else smile. Okay, that's all for today. I'm going to go home early to give Carol a surprise, Ross said after they had hung out for a while. Ross had always been proud of himself for asking his wife out with friends. After the initial excitement of their marriage wore off, they had been rather passive. But after Carol met Susan, Ross noticed a greater enthusiasm between him and Carol in the evenings, which allowed him to showcase his skills. The next night, Ross, oblivious to the time, arrived at the bar in a dazed state. By then, most of the customers had already left, leaving the bar empty. Ross sighed and asked Phoebe, the lone patron at the bar, "Where's everyone?" "It's closed," Phoebe said. "The bartender told me to lock the door after finishing my drink." Then, Phoebe turned to Ross, who was acting like he was asking what was wrong, and asked, "What happened?" "You said last night that Carol had a surprise for you on your way home." "A big surprise indeed," Ross said with a wry smile. "It makes me feel like my marriage is nothing." "Huh?" Phoebe was stunned, instinctively assuming Carol had found someone else. "Carol's a lesbian." Ross's dejected words shattered Phoebe's understanding. "What?" Phoebe asked instinctively, then realized, "I can't believe it." "Oh, Poor Ross, I feel like an idiot. Ross went to the bar and poured himself a drink. I should have known this earlier. Carol's been going to the gym with her for so long, and it's not working at all. Taking a sip, Ross let out all his frustrations. 7 years. Carol and I have been together for 7 years. She's the only woman who has ever loved me, the only one he has ever had. Ross felt a little embarrassed at this point. He hadn't told her about the patient guidance the librarian had given him in high school, but Phoebe was moved by his words. "Oh, Ross, you shouldn't have to endure this. You're so kind and thoughtful." Phoebe hugged Ross and kissed him on the cheek. Being so close, the feeling was building up, and both of them couldn't help but exchange a glance, confirming their gazes. The next moment, Locke, who had been listening to the explosive news outside the bar's restroom, received a call and interrupted the wildly mixed conversation. "Ahem, it's not what you think, Locke. Ross hurriedly stood up and tried to explain, but didn't know how to begin. "I heard everything. It's because Carol is a lesbian," Locke shrugged. "So you're planning to divorce him?" "No, I'm not," Ross said. "If that's the case, then why are you?" Locke gestured to Phoebe. "After all, lesbianism is not only a few things that are innate, but also a lot of things that are acquired. I think you should think more about how to salvage it, instead of rushing to find another partner. It was just an accident." "I just wanted to comfort Ross at first." Phoebe, ever the experienced one, slowly got up from the pool table, straightened her clothes, and calmly stood aside, explaining. "Okay, I have to go back later." "You guys can do whatever you want," Locke said, leaving the bar. Frankly, he couldn't help but complain about the Americans' lack of integrity in this regard. Couples, or even couples, would immediately head to a bar to soothe their frustrations, which could easily lead to problems. They prioritize finding solutions to problems, rather than venting their anger. This American approach completely contradicted the values Locke had developed in his previous life in the East. It wasn't just the American dramas he'd watched in his previous life. Locke had witnessed many similar situations in the United States over the years. After returning to New York, Locke stayed for only 3 days before leaving. He needed to pick up Ashley and Prosperity. From what she'd heard on the phone, it seemed like they had something to discuss. "So, Chris wants to find an investor." Upon arriving in Prosperity, Ashley explained why she'd specifically requested Locke's visit. By then, the FBI had cleared out the spiders, and the residents of Prosperity had returned to their homes, sorting out their losses and mourning the victims. Amidst all the bad news, the discovery of a new gold vein was the only good news, offering hope for the town's renewed development. Yes, Chris inherited a gold mine and discovered a new vein, but he's short on funds and needs to find new investors, Ashley said. "But the investors' terms are too demanding. I just remembered you said you made a lot of money writing books, so I wondered if you could invest." "Honestly, I'm not interested in investing in a gold mine." Locke truly had no interest. Investing in a gold mine meant little to him. He'd have made more money that way by then. "Please, Chris is Samantha's boyfriend, and they were getting married soon. Just consider it a favor." Ashley hugged Locke's arm, her cheek pressing against it as she pleaded. "At most, I'll agree to change into the uniform you mentioned last time." "Are you sure?" Locke studied Ashley, thinking of finding a custom-made company that could design custom uniforms for Black Widow agents. That would be fun. As a writer, he could guest star as a screenwriter. A plot involving Black Widow using unique techniques to extract a confession, or Agent Romanoff being captured by Hydra, would be a fascinating one. Facing Locke's expectant eyes, Ashley suppressed her shyness and nodded. She had a very good relationship with her mother. Although Samantha had been very strict with her since she was a child, she knew that her mother was doing it for her own good and also hoped that Samantha would be happy in the future. For her mother's happiness, she felt that she could satisfy some of her boyfriend's hobbies. Thinking of this, Ashley still had some small expectations in her heart. However, she did not forget the business. Seeing that Locke seemed to be about to give in, she quickly said, "I'll contact Chris and ask him to talk to you." Chapter 60, Want to See the World. A lot of mining equipment was damaged by the spiders. I've applied for compensation from the insurance company, but the amount isn't enough to buy new equipment and start operations again. In Ashley's living room, Chris handed the information he'd brought to Locke and began explaining the current state of the gold mine. "Okay, so how much investment do you need?" Locke asked after reviewing the information. "We need to buy new tools and find a way to deal with the gas around the mine. $300,000 will be enough." The insurance company will cover part of the compensation, and I'm willing to give up 30% of my shares for that. Initially, Chris was reluctant to give up such a large stake, but after a series of setbacks in recent days, with most of the investors he contacted demanding for 40 or even 50%, his bottom line began to decline. That sounds good. After all, we're friends who've been through life and death together. I won't ask for any more equity, but I need one more condition. Locke wasn't being fussy. He knew the gold mine existed and wouldn't lose money under normal circumstances, but he didn't want to be ripped off, so he laid out his conditions. I want the company's finances handled by someone I can appoint. If there are no problems, all we need to do is contact a lawyer and finalize the details before signing the contract. He still had plenty of cash on hand. If he kept it, half would be taken away come tax time, so he might as well use this opportunity to spend it. He also understood why Americans weren't very interested in saving money, as saving would result in significant losses, while spending and investing could be tax deductible. Either he could save his money and be heavily taxed, benefiting the U.S. government, or he could find a way to spend it or continue investing. He couldn't keep his eye on the gold mine. It was just a small business for him, but he didn't want to risk losing money due to financial problems. Having his own people in charge of the finances was standard practice. After some consideration, Chris agreed to this request, and the two sides quickly reached an agreement. Okay, business is done. Now it's private time. Ashley and I are going to the movies. What about you guys? Locke looked at Chris and Samantha, who were sitting with him. We don't need to. Just have fun. Chris smiled and shook Locke's hand. He had been incredibly busy these past few days. Then I won't interrupt your celebrations. Don't forget to ask me for your wedding. Locke smiled and gestured to Samantha, making the sheriff smile sheepishly. I will. 2 days later, with their lawyers present, Locke and Chris signed the investment agreement, and he left with Ashley. However, he didn't return to Fairview immediately. Instead, he went to New York. Ashley said she had been wanting to see New York for a long time. Wow, this place is amazing. After spending an entire afternoon shopping on Fifth Avenue with Tang Wei Locke, Ashley and the others returned to Locke's newly rented apartment, carrying their haul. As long as you like it, Locke shrugged. I love New York. Ashley raised her shopping bags, placed them on the living room sofa, and began to take stock of her purchases. Tang Wei put down the bags and opened the refrigerator door. Anyone want a drink? Give me a Coke, Ashley said as she sorted through her newly purchased clothes. I'll just have water. Unlike American TV shows where people pour themselves a glass of wine upon returning home, it's not just about health, but also economically uneconomical. In reality, even Americans usually just drink water or ordinary beverages upon returning home. The portrayal in TV shows and movies is mostly about advertising. Such soft advertising is ubiquitous in the U.S., creating a growing number of alcoholics, forcing many Americans to join Alcoholics Anonymous committees. Here you go. Tang Wei poured a glass of water for himself and Locke, then handed Ashley the Coke. After gulping down the Coke, Ashley said, Thanks, Alice. This was a rare friendly attitude she had shown towards Tang Wei in the past few days. After all, she already knew about Tang Wei and Locke's relationship. Although Locke had made his stance clear from the beginning, he nearly fell out when they first met Tang Wei in New York. Fortunately, Locke had his own way. Tang Wei, on the other hand, showed little reaction. She had known everything for a long time and had seen the ways of the wealthy in Las Vegas, so she was prepared. She was now focused on using Locke's money to complete her studies, and perhaps even seize opportunities to advance in her career. As for the future, Locke had already said that if he wanted to leave or find a boyfriend, as long as he informed them in advance, they could part ways amicably. After all, this was modern society, and Locke had no plans to have children. People viewed children as a continuation of their own lives, but he was pursuing the path of immortality and godhood. He couldn't even guarantee his own godhood, let alone the prospect of his entire family ascending to heaven. Rather than watching his children gradually age and die before his eyes, it was better for him not to have children in the first place. Consequently, he couldn't expect every woman he had a close relationship with to willingly devote their lives to him, or for them to live in peace together. That was simply unrealistic. Ashley was busy sorting out the clothes she had just received. Tang Wei received a call and said to Locke after hanging up, Monica said that everyone is going to comfort Ross together today. Do you want to join us? Ross is still depressed there. Locke couldn't help but complain. Isn't it just that his wife is a lesbian? What's the big deal? Can't he be more manly? As long as he is strong enough, lace is not a problem at all. What lace? Ashley, who was listening at the side, suddenly became interested, and a gossipy gleam in her eyes. Tang Wei had no choice but to briefly tell him about Ross's situation. Monica and Ross, her older brother, had been at odds since childhood, but at this time, he still had to show some concern. That's interesting, dear. Are you going over there later? Or take me to see it too, Ashley said as she leaned over to Locke and hugged him. You want to see a show, right? Locke rolled his eyes at Ashley. It's still early. We agreed to go at 8 o'clock. Let's have dinner first and then go. So the three of them packed up and found a restaurant for dinner. They made their way to the bar, where they saw Monica, Chandler, and Joey huddled around Ross. Don't be sad. I actually think this is pretty cool, Joey said. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. Chandler couldn't help but roll his eyes. Yeah, great. I'm going to have nightmares again tonight. After all, as a child, he'd witnessed the entire affair between his parents and the male servant. Even now, it haunts him, haunting him every time he talks about homosexuality or lesbianism. Did you misunderstand? Monica interrupted the two's half-hearted attempts at persuasion. Of course not. Even though Carol didn't tell me explicitly, I'm certain, Ross said angrily. So what are you going to do? Monica, unsure of what to say, turned her gaze to Locke, who had just arrived. The question is whether you want to get the girl back. Locke ordered a glass of wine at the bar. After all, the one who cheated on you was just a woman, which is actually easier for men to accept. There are all kinds of people in the United States, and lesbians are actually nothing big. There are people who want it all. Locke is right. Come on, Ross, I can go with you. Joey was as if he was going to take Ross to see the world. Chapter 61 Science is so interesting. Monica immediately stopped Joey's behavior. She and Ross had always sabotaged each other, but at this point, they didn't want anyone else to get involved. Okay, Monica said, seeing her anger was about to explode. Joey could only raise his hands in surrender, feeling a pity. I'm just concerned about Ross, confirming that Ross, looking dejected, was the center of the situation. Ashley studied him with interest, and then caught Ross's attention. Hi, I'm Ross, Ross said, his face beaming with excitement. Ashley was so young and beautiful, and her gaze on him kept gazing at him, which made Ross wonder if she had any interest in him. Ross, Monica, who was familiar with her brother, glared at Ross fiercely. It seems that you are not that sad. Of course not, Ross subconsciously retorted. Carol is the only woman who has ever loved me. You mean she is not the woman you love? Locke quickly punctured Ross's tire. No wonder you are still in the mood to chat up beautiful women now. I'm not, Ross roared, and then lowered his head with a guilty look under the gazes of several people. Knowing that this topic could not be further entangled, Ross simply changed the subject. I will ask about the matter between Carol and me when I get back today. By the way, can you help me get some phone numbers from Carol? Joey expressed his inner request. Seeing that everyone was looking at him again, he forced an explanation. I am an actor and I must understand more about society. There was no answer. Ross simply ignored his words. Joey didn't pay any attention. He had already noticed the beautiful woman who had come in with Locke and Tang Wei. Seizing the opportunity, he approached Ashley, his eyes sparkling, and said in his characteristic accent, Hi, how are you? As the famous playboy from Friends, this unique greeting had always been his weapon for flirting with girls. Okay, Joey, Ashley's Locke's friend, Tang Wei, knowing Joey's habits, interrupted him directly. Don't try that on her. What? Joey was startled. He watched Ashley hug Locke and kiss him, then looked at Tang Wei. Alice, you guys. Monica and Chandler also looked at Locke in surprise. Was this what they call a high-end player? This is Ashley, from Boomtown. Shrugging, Locke merely introduced Ashley. Tang Wei and Ashley were together for now, just to maintain a balance. Anything else would be a waste of time, but he didn't need to explain. He didn't deny it, and Tang Wei and Ashley didn't refute it either, leaving everyone stunned. Ross, in particular, looked at Tang Wei and Ashley, his face suddenly filled with anticipation, as if something had occurred to him. I understand why, Phoebe suddenly said, startlingly. The reason is simple, Phoebe said seriously, as the others stared in amazement. Locke, open your palm and bend your pinky, ring, and middle fingers. Not only Locke, but Joey, Chandler and the others also curiously followed Phoebe's lead. See, isn't this obvious? Phoebe said with a grin, bringing the boys' hands together. The next moment, under everyone's bewildered gaze, Phoebe explained the rich scientific theory behind this statement. "Oh, Phoebe," Monica exclaimed sheepishly, then whispered in Phoebe's ear, "Is this true?" "Of course it is. This is the truth based on scientific research," Phoebe said confidently. Phoebe didn't even consider Ross's feelings, and she choked him. "So scientists study this every day," Joey said. His expression fascinated. "Science is so interesting. I should have chosen to be a scientist. I thought only American scientists would be so bored studying this," Locke rumbled, recalling a scene from the TV show Friends. It seemed like a scene like this had actually happened. A previous life, the same method had been circulated in the East for a while, perhaps even originating from Friends. "Scientists wouldn't be that bored," Ross retorted, though his confidence was somewhat lacking. Joey said, "Is it true? Can't we just go to the bathroom and verify it later?" "No," Locke and the others shouted in agreement. "Men and women are different. Women can talk about extremely private topics without a care in the world, but men, while eloquent about picking up girls, generally refuse to engage in such conversations." Phoebe, the seasoned expert, said with interest, "I think that's a good idea. Tell us the results, so we can screen our dates beforehand." The girls smiled awkwardly, their eyes filled with anticipation. "I need to go back first." Ross, last in line, finally couldn't help himself and stood up. The next morning, Locke brought Ashley to Monica's for breakfast. Spotting Ross sitting at the front of the table, he asked, "So, how did your talk with Carol go?" "Just so-so," Ross waved his hand perfunctorily, not really wanting to answer. Monica, who was making breakfast, curiously pressed, "What's that like?" "I think my marriage is probably hopeless," Ross finally confessed under the curious gazes of several people. "Is she really going to give up on your 7-year relationship?" Excited, Monica waved her knife hand. "Well, it's really no big deal," Locke said quickly. Judging from Ross's expression, he seems relieved. Ross twitched his lips, glanced at Locke, and said nothing, his mind still reeling from last night. He had come home to see Carol and Susan together. Driven by recent excitement and inexplicable anticipation, he had accidentally proposed something. He was met with a combined fury of the two girls and kicked out. Why don't these two girls just turn on Locke? Thinking of this, Ross glanced at Tang Wei, who had just woken up and was sitting naturally to Locke's right. He also greeted Ashley, who was sitting to Locke's left, very naturally. He felt inexplicably depressed. "By the way, Ashley, are you planning to stay in New York?" Monica asked, sitting across from Locke after bringing the last breakfast to the table. "No," Ashley shook her head. "I'm going to college. Locke has already contacted a community college for me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 62 Bank Robbers. Ashley had just graduated from high school. Her previous grades were mediocre, making attending a prestigious university nearly impossible, and she hadn't previously planned to go. She spent a few days in New York City with Locke, touring the city's bustling districts, browsing luxury brands and dining in exclusive restaurants. After experiencing the city's glitz and glamour, Ashley, who had grown up in a small town and never experienced a big city, vowed to stay in the city. However, the cost of living in a big city was high. During their conversation, Locke calculated the costs. With just a simple waitressing job, she'd struggle to survive, let alone enjoy the life she envisioned. Only by attending college and obtaining a higher education could she find a better-paying job. Ashley wasn't particularly impressed by Locke's argument. She felt that with Locke by her side, she would definitely be able to live the life she wanted. She didn't care about college, but since Locke had suggested it, she decided to give it a try. She wasn't a stellar student, but under Samantha's supervision, she was definitely not a slouch. Knowing Locke was thinking about her, she accepted without much hesitation. Community colleges in the United States have a very low admission threshold, with few age or educational requirements. Basically, anyone can attend simply by paying the tuition. Even most community colleges offer low tuition and flexible class schedules, making community college a viable option for those who can't afford a full university education. In The Big Bang Theory, after Penny and Leonard got together, She felt the gap between her academic qualifications was too great. Hoping to bridge the gap, she enrolled in community college. However, as the high school boss, she had experienced a classic American, happy upbringing, leaving her with a blank slate. Her essay was a complete mess. Leonard, having read her paper, couldn't bear it anymore and helped revise it. Leonard thought his changes were minor, but in reality, the content remained unchanged, save for the title. Penny's pride was shattered, and she angrily berated Leonard. Later, she slapped Leonard in the face her hard-working paper, which had a B+. But then, using her status as a high school boss, she instructed Bernadette and Amy, her paper helpers, to keep a secret. Bernadette and Amy weren't at all upset by Penny's attitude. Instead, they were extremely excited. They'd never had such close contact with a big sister like Penny before in school. Community college only lasted 2 years, and with excellent grades, one could potentially enroll in a regular university. Even credits earned at community college could be accepted by regular universities, saving time on retaking related courses. Of course, achieving this was difficult. Besides academic performance, it also depended on whether the community college had access to the resources of a regular university. This wasn't a problem for Locke. He would undoubtedly have enough connections and, with his financial resources, get Ashley into a top university. While it might not be easy, getting her into a less prestigious one would be a piece of cake. After breakfast at Monica's, Locke left with Ashley and Tang Wei, preoccupied with the system changes. Last night, Locke completed the task of getting Ross to bravely ask Carol for a man's favor. The potential points he'd earned, combined with his existing accumulation, had brought his physical fitness to 200. A physical fitness score of 200 points wasn't as simple as the statistics suggested, it was merely twice that of an average person. Locke's own private testing revealed it was at least 3 times that of an average person. The system had also been updated. According to the instructions, the mission system had been optimized to trigger more missions. Beyond that, there was no further explanation. Arriving at the apartment building, the three of them drove, preparing to take Tang Wei to work at Sky Fund. Halfway down the road, a fiery red BMW 760 suddenly whizzed past his car. Tang Wei noticed the beautiful BMW. "This is downtown, right? Driving so fast, aren't you afraid of getting a ticket?" He had barely finished speaking when sirens blared from behind. One police car after another also rushed by, clearly heading for the fiery red BMW. "Wow, this is exciting. Are they a gang of speed racers?" Ashley excitedly opened the car window to peer in. Locke activated the HD video mode, recalling the moment he'd crossed paths with a BMW. It looked like there were 4 women inside, and the beautiful woman behind the wheel looked familiar. He quickly recalled that in his previous life, one of America's most famous models, Lady G's face and long legs had been the subject of his fantasies. Then, Locke remembered the origin of the scene before him. It seemed to be from a movie, with Lady G playing the villainous female robber. The plot was simple, but it was a shame that the robbers were caught in the end. After all, they were 4 beautiful women, and this was a world where looks mattered. Ding, mission triggered. It would be a shame if such beautiful robbers were imprisoned. Please help them escape. The mission rewards 150 potential points. Has the system started to prioritize looks these days? And why didn't the Die Hard and Octagon plots trigger missions before, only sitcoms like Young Sheldon? Wait, it seems the mission system has been optimized. Could it be that the previous mission system couldn't trigger movie-related missions, but now it does? Thinking this, Locke instinctively stepped on the accelerator, intending to follow. However, by then, the flaming red BMW and the police car had already raced off, disappearing around a bend. When Locke reached the intersection, he could see nothing. The road ahead was in chaos, a swarm of cars jammed, forcing Locke to stop. "It looks like we'll have to wait a while for traffic to clear. We'll be late at this rate." Glancing around, Tang Wei said, "Why don't we get out and go over? It's not far from the office anyway." Giving up on the pursuit, Locke nodded. "Do you need a ride?" "No. Didn't you promise Ashley you'd go buy a car with her later?" Tang Wei said, opening the car door and getting out, bag in hand. Locke and Ashley waited in the car for a while until the police arrived to clear the traffic, but it looked like they wouldn't be able to clear the traffic anytime soon. Bored in the car, the two got out and stood by, watching the police go about their business. 2 other police officers were nearby, discussing the robbers. Those robbers weren't just brave enough to rob a bank in downtown New York City, They had a great car and impressive driving skills. The department immediately dispatched 30 police cars, but they couldn't stop them. They've probably already escaped, another officer curled his lips. It all comes down to that BMW 760 Lee, which is so much better than the crappy police cars we had. It's not just the car, the first officer said. Those robbers were really good drivers. Not everyone can reach speeds over 100 miles per hour in the city. Well, they're really good drivers, so it's no surprise they got away, the other officer shrugged. Hearing this, Locke, wanting to gather more information and confirm the plot's progress, asked, "What's going on? Why are so many police cars chasing that BMW?" The two officers glanced at Locke, about to offer a warning, but seeing his attire, they remained silent. Locke pulled out his wallet and took out 2 bills. "I'm just a little curious. With all the noise, it won't be long before we see it on the news." The 2 policemen agreed and accepted the cash. 4 robbers just robbed the bank. According to the bank, they took over $3 million in cash. "I see. Thank you for satisfying my curiosity," Locke nodded. "It's my pleasure, sir." The policemen were also very polite, as Locke was obviously a wealthy man. American police, besides being paid by taxes, rely heavily on donations from wealthy individuals for their salaries. This is really interesting. I've been in this small town all my years, and I've never seen a bank robbery like this. After the 2 policemen walked away, Ashley looked on with a look of anticipation. "I just wonder if those cops can catch the robbers." "Who knows?" Locke shrugged. "If they weren't greedy and just took the money and left immediately, they'd probably be hard to find." Chapter 63: An Unexpected Discovery. It wasn't long before news reports about the bank robbery appeared on all major New York television stations. The next day, Locke traveled alone to the Manhattan area where the robbery had occurred. From the news, he learned that this was Jean Niang's first robbery, and according to the plot, she would be pulling out again. Coincidentally, not long after, he saw a familiar fiery red BMW sprint past. Locke hurried to follow, and then bursts of sirens wailed from behind. The other car was moving very fast, taking advantage of time, especially during rush hour, when delays can easily lead to traffic jams. Locke stepped on the accelerator to follow. At an intersection, the light turned red. He tried to speed past it, but unexpectedly, a young man darted out from the side. He took his foot off the accelerator and slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a stop. Then, he saw the young man standing in front of a car to his right, flashing his officer ID, "NYPD. I'm going to use your crunch." Bang! Bang! A series of braking and crashing sounds could be heard. The man's sudden appearance caused the car he'd stopped to slam on the brakes, and the car behind him, in a panic, swerved, flipping a tire. The long line of cars collided like dominoes, prompting Locke to scrutinize the officer. "He's quite talented, and he seems." Then, the young officer saw the accident scene, paused briefly, then quickly put away his ID card, feigned indifference, and quickly left. After everything was over, Locke was certain this man was most likely the eccentric male protagonist in the movie. Perhaps he'd had a lot of bad luck, but suddenly had a stroke of good fortune, a series of coincidences that led to the successful case. Seeing this, Locke didn't stay where he was. Instead, he got out of his car and began searching the area, spotting numerous police cars patrolling the area. After about 10 minutes, he spotted his target at an intersection, a royal blue BMW parked on the side of the road, with 4 striking women sitting inside. An officer was inspecting the driver's door. The driver's seat opened, and Locke couldn't help but whistle. His long, beautiful legs extended first, a pair of high heels dropping to the ground, and then 2 long legs followed. The actors playing the robbers were indeed top models. From the neck down, it felt like legs, combined with their slender skirts, they were a perfect way to draw attention. Then another beautiful woman got out, wearing the same long legs and short skirt. It felt like the long legs of these robbers would make a bunch of Atticus cling to them forever. The woman who got out later dealt with a policeman, while the one who got out of the driver's seat, Lady G, glanced around and paused when her eyes landed on Locke, likely due to his immense charisma. The two exchanged glances, and the woman's radiant eyes told Locke she was definitely a stunner. Combined with her half-smile, she was incredibly alluring. Quietly approaching, he saw the policeman staring at the woman next to him, stammering and asking them to open the trunk. As the trunk opened, the officer saw 2 large silver boxes inside and immediately grew nervous. He stepped back, his hand reaching for his service pistol at his waist. "Please open them." His reasoning was simple. According to information gathered, bank robbers use these silver boxes to carry money. The long-legged woman, played by the actress, who seemed to be named Vanessa, maintained a half-smile. "Do I have to open them, officer?" Her voice was cold, not at all coquettish, but Locke felt a jolt of excitement. He stepped aside, observing the scene as if he were a bystander. "Mom, please open them, immediately," the officer repeated. A smile crossed Vanessa's face as she walked over to the trunk and pressed the latch. The boxes slowly opened, and the scene inside stunned the officer. Locke, standing nearby, whistled again. "Wow, what a stunning sight." Looking at the neatly packed panties in the box, the police officer looked embarrassed. "You can go now, ladies." The long-legged women were about to get back into the car when Locke stepped forward and said, "Hi, beautiful ladies, can we meet each other?" Giving Locke a half-smile, Vanessa said, "If there's a chance next time," then got in and drove off. The royal blue BMW started up and drove away. Locke, in a good mood, returned to where his car had been parked. He accepted the ticket from the police officer who had arrived, exchanged a few words, and drove off. Locke then drove leisurely. He had earlier left a magical mark on the BMW and easily followed it to a dilapidated building in Queens. Judging from the surroundings, it was probably a repair shop, but the door was tightly closed. As Locke got closer, his keen ears could hear faint voices coming from inside. He didn't rush in immediately, but circled around to a vent, climbed up, and peered inside. He saw a man and a woman being held at gunpoint by a tall, slender figure. Two other tall figures seemed to be arguing. According to the plot, Locke knew they were speaking Portuguese, but since he hadn't learned it before, he couldn't understand. However, it seemed they were arguing about whether to silence them. Those four tall figures weren't exactly ruthless, at least not in the movies. This scene further confirmed Locke's judgment. A true killer wouldn't have that look or expression. They'd captured the unlucky cop and a black woman, apparently named Belle, who drove a taxi and also enjoyed speed racing. The unlucky cop exchanged flirtatious glances with Belle, then, while the gun-wielding figure wasn't paying attention, he snatched a gun from her and took her to a small room, awaiting his opportunity to strike back. Bang, 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 the four men fired back, scaring the hapless police officer, who was about to retaliate, back into the room. They exchanged glances and got in their car and left. At that moment, they reached the door of the small room and heard Belle and the white youth laughing. They had intended to use their stored gas to intimidate the men outside, but they hadn't recognized it as nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas. Sensing the men were retreating, Locke no longer hesitated. He kicked the door open and, without waiting for the hapless police officer or Belle to react, cast a sleeping spell. Both men collapsed. Given Locke's magical prowess, they wouldn't wake up for 3 or 4 days. Without their intervention, the police would have accidentally uncovered the men's robbery scheme. Catching them would be a challenge. By the time they woke up, everything would be over. Locke then turned and left, returning to his car to continue tracking the men. Once he realized they were no longer moving, he approached and discovered a warehouse on the outskirts of New York City. There were many similar buildings nearby, mostly abandoned and deserted. After parking the car in a secluded area and getting out to approach the warehouse, Locke noticed 2 strangers watching from the doorway. He bypassed them and, as before, found a vent. He was surprised to find that in addition to the 4 tall, muscular men, there were also 2 unfamiliar white men. This scene had never appeared in the movie, and this unexpected discovery made Locke concentrate his attention, wanting to see what was going on. Chapter 64 is not the point. At this moment, 2 men not seen in the film were chatting with 4 tall men. With his 5 senses, Locke could clearly hear their conversation. After a moment, Locke understood the 2 men's backgrounds. The leader of the 2 men, Dalit, was the leader of a New York gang. The bank robbery was the product of their collaboration. The 4 tall men were from Brazil, and as outsiders, they lacked local connections. Dalit was responsible for providing various information, such as bank intelligence, road conditions, weapons for the robbery, and also arranged hideouts, vehicles, and modification and maintenance tools. After the operation was successful, Dalit was also responsible for laundering the money. He took 70% and the 4 tall men took 30%. This was actually a fair deal. Even in simple money laundering, especially for this kind of illicit money, 30% is almost a cost price. For example, When Locke received over $600 million in bearer bonds, he only received a little over $400 million. Bearer bonds are easier to launder, with the market value typically starting at 50%. Especially since Dollop provided so much support. However, judging by the attitudes of both sides, Locke suspected that even if they succeeded, it wouldn't end peacefully. Counterattacking is standard practice for these people. The four men were now in control, with a combined proceeds of $8 million in their possession. According to their plan, they would rob the final target in 2 days, and only after that would they negotiate. These four men were quite bold, having already humiliated the NYPD twice in a row. The banks must be furious. In a place like New York, the police still have no leads on the serial bank robbers. While it might seem like a simple shooting to the average person, the pressure on the police is far greater than a typical homicide. If the case remains unsolved, the bank's capitalists will make the NYPD look bad, forcing at least several high-ranking officials to resign and affecting the salaries of numerous officers. After Dollop and his men departed, the four men left the warehouse soon after. Back in the car, he followed the four wiry men from a distance, even stopping by the roadside to call the police from a payphone to prevent the unlucky cop and Bell from getting into trouble in the repair shop. Locke then pondered. The four wiry men had dared to flaunt their presence after the robbery, unfazed by detection, not just because of their new outfits and the color of their BMWs. It was simply because they had already used a garbage truck to move the stolen money. Dollop likely didn't know about their tactics, otherwise they would have already found a way to get their hands on the money. The four wiry men wanted to keep the money for themselves, so they probably had another escape plan. With the unlucky cop and Bell dealt with, Dollop was the only one who could pose a threat to them. Locke, however, didn't know what Dollop would do, so for now, he could only counteract his tactics to successfully complete his mission. He followed the four wiry men all the way to their true hideout, a warehouse, a place Dollop likely didn't know about, as they were sealing the money and stuffing it into the compartments of the car doors. It seemed Locke's judgment was correct. They had no intention of handing the money over to Dollop. After they finished their work and rested in a small room nearby, Locke nimbly infiltrated the warehouse and attached the tracking device he had assembled the previous night to the underside of the car. The magical tracking mark had a limited duration. By the time the four long-legged creatures were deployed again in 2 days, it would likely have dissipated. Locke needed to constantly check their location. After doing this, Locke cast an invisibility spell and approached the small room, where he overheard their conversation and learned of their plans. It turned out they planned to rob the last of the money and leave New York immediately. They wouldn't proceed with the transaction with Dollop as agreed, but instead planned to drive away from New York and return to Brazil through another route. While the money was stolen, in a place like Brazil, no one cared about it, so spending it directly would be a breeze. The US dollar was a hard currency there. After confirming everything, Locke quietly left the warehouse and returned to the apartment. "Are you up, honey? I brought lunch," Locke called, opening the apartment door and entering the bedroom. Ashley lay soundly asleep in bed, scattered all about her clothes, the custom-made Natasha Romanoff outfit. After the custom outfit was completed, Locke tried it on with Ashley. Perhaps after enduring too much torture from Red Skull the previous night, Agent Romanoff hadn't woken up yet. "Alright, hurry up. It's almost noon." He lifted Ashley from the bed, the covers sliding back, revealing the beautiful scenery. Home, I'm feeling weak, dear," Ashley mumbled drowsily. "Alright, hurry up and clean up. We can't sleep anymore. We have a show tonight," Locke urged. Ashley yawned, using Locke's help to get out of bed and into the bathroom to clean up. Locke went into the living room and set the table with the food he'd packed. After a moment, he saw Ashley emerge, wearing an oversized t-shirt, her face still slightly damp with moisture. After breakfast, Ashley took another shower and finally had the energy to turn on the TV. "I feel so reluctant to go back home tomorrow," Ashley said as she changed the channel. "Why, do you want to stay a few more days?" "School will start in half a month," Locke said. "But I want to stay a few more days. I haven't been to a big city since I was a child, and there are still many things I haven't seen." Ashley had been asking for this for the past few days. She really didn't want to leave New York. "I think you've had too much fun," Locke pinched Ashley's cheek. "School's still a while away, why rush?" Ashley clung to Locke. Seeing the Secret Service uniform on the floor, her eyes rolled as she whispered, "At most, I'll promise you one more game. I remember you really liked the Catwoman uniform, You're a fast learner, girl, Locke pondered for a moment. In that case, there's a business reception in a couple of days. Why don't you go with me? I'll go order a dress with you this afternoon, just in time for it. I'll do whatever you say. Seeing Locke finally relent, Ashley excitedly stood on tiptoe and gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek. The next moment, Locke pulled her aside. The two chatted for a long time, until Ashley was almost breathless. Since the establishment of Sky Fund, and especially after Locke received over $100 million in funds, various invitations began to arrive. Usually, these were handled by Ms. Mora, but since this mission required Locke to stay in New York for 2 more days, he decided to attend. As for Catwoman, it wasn't the main point. Locke reassured himself. Chapter 65, Quantity. The next morning, after his run, he returned to the warehouse where the 4 men were staying to check on them. He snuck inside and checked on them. He saw 2 watching TV, 1 reading a newspaper, and 1 showering. The sound of running water and the aroma of shower gel filled the air. Using his invisibility, Locke swaggered over to the car carrying the money and discovered it was completely covered in a dark plastic sheeting. The plastic sheeting made noises whenever it moved, attracting attention, so he stopped investigating. Just then, a noise echoed from the small room, accompanied by a woman's voice. Then, a small window opened, and the 3 men, still resting, ran towards them. They circled the car, checking to see if it had been tampered with. Confirming the plastic sheeting was still in place, they breathed a sigh of relief. Vanessa, the leader, also emerged, wearing only a bath towel that barely covered her back, and began to inspect the car. Seeing this, Locke instinctively held his breath. He watched her twirl back and forth several times, her nearly unrestrained, perfect body swaying before his eyes. Water dripped from her still undried hair, streaking down her torso. The scene before him was as thrilling as a shower gel commercial. Locke finally composed himself, recording the thrilling scene and locking it deep in his memory. Vanessa confirmed everything was alright before saying, "It's okay. I guess I was just too nervous." The other 3 didn't complain. After all, this was money earned at great risk, so being cautious was a given. The 4 of them retreated to the rest room and closed the door. The TV volume was turned up, and they could still hear the sound of conversation. Locke approached the lounge and listened to their conversation. They were still speaking Portuguese. Fortunately, Locke had been brushing up on his Portuguese these days, so he caught some key words. He roughly understood that they were discussing tomorrow's plan and some details. After listening for a while, the long-legged women ended their conversation and began to eat, and Locke quietly slipped out of the warehouse. That evening, Locke took Ashley, who had changed into a formal dress, to a business reception at the Four Seasons Hotel. The event was attended primarily by senior executives from banks and securities firms, as well as some wealthy New Yorkers. Somewhere in the banquet hall, a white man in his 40s suddenly glanced over and said, "Look over there. Here comes the new Wall Street genius." The 3 men he was chatting with also looked over there. These men were all prominent figures in banks or investment banks. One of the men, who was about 60 years old and had gray hair, said, "I heard that it has been more than a month since he acquired Sky Fund. This is his first time attending a cocktail party like this. By the way, you have all heard about the new fund project launched by Sky Fund, right? The principal is guaranteed, and the annual dividend is guaranteed to be 6%. It is indeed very attractive. It seems that he is very confident. After all, he has the capital to be confident. Not everyone can more than double more than $400 million in a year. He is much more powerful than Martin Channing. He is indeed a powerful figure. If it weren't for his stockbroker's greed, I'm afraid we wouldn't know about his existence. Do you want to go and talk to him? John, he is a client of your Citigroup, right?" "I'm just a senior executive." John frowned. There are quite a few people targeting him this time, but judging from his actions, he is more inclined to attract investments and operate them himself, rather than handing the money over to others. "I think so too. I heard that he has just established his own asset management office and invested a lot of funds in several companies including Time Warner. He is planning a seat on the board of directors. Furthermore, Sky Fund continues to attract investment, suggesting he's not prepared to risk his own money any further. After all, success is unpredictable, and he's making a wise choice. Guaranteeing the principal isn't smart enough. If anything goes wrong, he'll have to cover the cost with his own capital. Who knows what he's thinking?" but it's said his fund has already attracted $40 million in investment, and many more are waiting to see if his success can continue. Meanwhile, Locke, walking into the banquet hall arm in arm with Ashley, felt the gazes of curiosity, surprise, and scrutiny from all around him. He wasn't surprised. His identity hadn't been revealed to the public, but it was no longer a secret to those with access to resources. They were also scrutinizing Locke, this sudden little guy. "Hi, Locke Lee, I'm so glad you accepted my invitation," said Charlie, a Merrill Lynch executive and host of the reception. With his arrival, more people turned their attention. "Hello, Mr. Charlie." From Sky Fund, Locke shook his hand. Soon, John, the president of Citibank, and a vice president of Lehman Brothers approached. Locke greeted them one by one with a smile and introduced himself. Since he couldn't hide his identity and still wanted to make a living on Wall Street, he'd inevitably have to interact with these Wall Street bigwigs, as well as the New York-based heads of various financial groups, to build connections along the way. There was a certain mutual interest on both sides, and the conversation flowed smoothly. Locke also took the opportunity to promote his fun project. "He's really popular. It seems everyone likes him." Even William Wentover, a middle-aged man watching from a distance, whispered to the young woman next to him. "It all comes down to his ability to make money. It's said this redneck from Texas more than doubled his fortune by hundreds of millions of dollars in just 1 year. My God, that's a huge fortune. That's why everyone wants to get close to him now, to test whether he's just lucky or truly capable," the man said. "As long as he can continue to prove his skills, someone will soon be willing to invest in him." Ashley stood beside Locke, listening to him chat with the people around him. She didn't understand what Locke was talking about, like energy industry trends and foreign exchange rates, but from their titles, she knew they were all important figures she'd never met before. She knew Locke was a billionaire, but aside from the fact that he rarely looked at the price when buying things for her, she hadn't had a particularly direct impression of him. But now, seeing Locke chatting and laughing with these people, she finally realized the weight of the billionaire status. Chapter 66: Locke's Goal. As one prominent figure after another appeared beside Locke, his circle quickly became the most eye-catching spot on the entire reception hall. Locke chatted with them one by one, exchanging business cards. In a matter of moments, he had a stack of them in his hands. This was just a preliminary encounter with these people. Future collaborations, perhaps even competition, would occur. As time went on, Locke's network would continue to expand. This was also the primary purpose of these receptions. Mr. Carrington's insights into the energy industry are truly eye-opening, Locke said with a smile as he chatted with a middle-aged man before him, his mind quickly racing through his profile. His exceptionally powerful mind allowed him to memorize these individuals' profiles before even attending the banquet, catering to their interests. The Carrington family held immense influence in the energy and power industries, but what most caught Locke's attention was their ownership of AOL. AOL primarily provided internet services, currently the largest in the United States, and thus Locke's target. The company was currently insignificant, but with the growth of the internet, it would soon rise to prominence on the NASDAQ, becoming a multi-billion-dollar internet company by the year 2000. Locke's interest in this company and his interest in Mr. Carrington's AOL shares wasn't just due to its rapidly appreciating stock price. It was also due to the fact that, at that time, it was slated to merge with Time Warner, the largest entertainment and media company. Unfortunately, AOL failed to identify the future direction of the internet. After suffering a devastating blow from the NASDAQ stock market crash in 2000, it never recovered, its stock price plummeting. AOL's operational problems severely impacted Time Warner, causing its stock price to plummet, ultimately leading to the separation of AOL and Time Warner. However, Locke could seize the opportunity presented by the merger to acquire sufficient Time Warner shares, and at the same time, take advantage of the decline in Time Warner's stock price to acquire more shares. With continuous mergers and expansion, Time Warner grew in size, but this also brought its own challenges. Its ownership structure became extremely complex, internal strife intensified, and its development gradually lagged behind. Time Warner, once a leading media conglomerate, was ultimately surpassed by the smiling Mickey Mouse. Compared to Disney, which only began its rise to prominence 2 decades later, Locke saw this as a great opportunity to more quickly control a media conglomerate. As long as he controlled enough equity and made internal adjustments, he could completely block Disney's path to development and replace Disney's future glory. With the help of the media group, He could also vigorously promote the Arcane Throne and the upcoming Lord of the Mysteries, thereby enhancing his own reputation as a writer and gaining potential points. So Locke now expressed considerable enthusiasm for Carrington. I'm quite optimistic about the computer industry, so I've invested in companies like Intel, Apple, Microsoft, and IBM. It seems you young people all like new things, Mr. Carrington said with a smile. Unlike old-fashioned people like me, Mr. Carrington, that's a bit of an exaggeration. As far as I know, you invested in AOL last year. That was my investment advisor's advice. It's a small investment, after all. Carrington said. I don't know much about companies like that. The internet is a new industry, closely related to the computer industry. I'm very interested in it, but I don't have the opportunity right now. Hearing this, Carrington understood Locke's intentions. You want my AOL shares? If there's an opportunity. Locke made no attempt to hide his thoughts. AOL wasn't very prominent at the moment, and perhaps his initiative might lead to a price increase, but he didn't want to miss this opportunity. So, what are your offers to impress me? Americans tended to be straightforward in business. He didn't care much about AOL shares, but since Locke wanted to buy, he was sure to seize the opportunity and offer a good price. I own some shares in oil and gas companies. Not a lot, but their value is comparable to your AOL shares. Locke offered his own bargaining chips. The Carrington family primarily operates in the energy industry, so they naturally have an interest in oil and gas shares. Simply acquiring Mr. Carrington's AOL shares with cash would inevitably incur a premium, but a share exchange would open up more areas for negotiation. It's like each party gets what they need, transforming the market from a buyer's to a mutually beneficial one. Sure enough, after Locke's words, Mr. Carrington's interest clearly grew. Sounds good. How about this? Let's find a private opportunity sometime. Of course, Locke agreed with a smile. The conversation ended there, and the two chatted for a few more moments. Mr. Carrington suddenly waved, pulling over a very young-looking girl. Fallon, haven't you always wanted to meet Mr. Locke Lee? He's here now. Don't miss this opportunity. Lee, this is my daughter Fallon. Mr. Carrington introduced the two with a smile. Locke looked at the blonde girl before him, who maintained a perfectly composed smile. She had a nice figure and a youthful look, likely under 20. But her eyes revealed she was no pushover, unlike most wealthy second-generation New Yorkers of her age. While these second generations, often blessed with a good upbringing, often focused on sports cars, exciting parties, and travel destinations, they often focused on what kind of sports car to drive, where to go to party, or where to go. Fallon Carrington, however, seemed even more scheming. After Mr. Carrington introduced her, his smile grew even warmer. Hello, I've heard so much about you. My father even said that if my brother and I had your talents, he'd have much less to worry about. Mr. Carrington, you're so kind. I wonder how many people would envy me for having such a beautiful and intelligent daughter. The two of them seemed to be engaging in a conversation, which made Ashley feel threatened, and she couldn't help but pinch Locke's arm. Fallon seemed to notice Ashley's subtle gesture, but she didn't take it too seriously. Although Ashley wore a custom-made gown and the latest Tiffany jewelry, Fallon could tell from her demeanor that she didn't come from a wealthy family. Considering Locke's age, Fallon concluded that Ashley was at most a toy for Locke's amusement. Even if she was slightly more beautiful and attractive than herself, it wouldn't matter. Born into a wealthy family, she understood certain principles earlier than many of her peers. Members of her family enjoyed everything they had, including material possessions and fame, but the most important thing was money. Locke, with his impressive track record, possessed a knack for multiplying wealth. Therefore, unless he suffered a series of setbacks, everyone would want him to manage their finances. He was like Martin Channing, Peter Lynch, and Warren Buffett, all renowned figures in their circles. The reason no one had immediately invested in Sky Fund was because Locke was too young and his sudden appearance meant they needed some time to observe him. My father introduced me to Locke, with some hidden agenda. After all, he and Locke were about the same age, both 18. Ever since the founding of the United States, the nation's upper class has always intermarried. The nation's 10 largest financial groups, through complex alliances and cross-shareholdings, have become formidable interest groups. This is a common tactic among the wealthy. Success is great, but failure is also irrelevant. Maintaining a good relationship is all that matters. Chapter 67 Poor Quality. After discovering Locke, this suddenly emerging young tycoon, Many began to study his financial operations and investments. However, they soon realized that Locke's actions completely defied conventional investment models, and some of his investments even failed to conform to the various investment principles taught in market analysis. He was simply haphazardly investing, seemingly with a haphazard approach. Yet, the results revealed that he consistently generated substantial profits. And recently, he's made new moves, seemingly moving away from relying solely on finance for profit. Besides continuing to invest in finance through Sky Fund, he's begun making long-term investments in companies and even attempting to join their boards. However, his choices differ significantly from Buffett's. Besides banking, Locke prefers to invest in computer-related technology, which has drawn more attention to these emerging tech companies. Now, everyone knows some of Locke's basic information. He was born the illegitimate son of an overseas tycoon, raised in an orphanage, and after inheriting an inheritance, he's been relentlessly active. Normally, someone with such a background wouldn't have achieved such success, but fortunately, a key point has made it clear to everyone: he's a supremely talented individual. Princeton University, through its most professional testing, confirmed that Locke possessed a superhuman IQ, even among the highest among geniuses. This made his achievements easier to understand. Everyone believed that every decade or so, Wall Street would produce one or two indescribable financial geniuses, and Locke's genius wasn't limited to finance. Everyone speculated that Locke had his own unique investment model, one that guaranteed him consistently high profits in the financial sector. Knowing Locke's situation, Fallon naturally enjoyed talking to him, enjoying the envious glances from other wealthy New Yorkers and even hoping to profit from him. Fallon Carrington was tactful. After getting acquainted, she exchanged contact information with Locke and quietly departed. The party eventually came to an end. At 9 o'clock, people began to leave, and by 10 o'clock, Locke had also left the ballroom with Ashley in tow. "Honey, you absolutely stole the show tonight," Locke said, hugging Ashley without waiting for her to change out of her dress. "But I think you're more interested in that Fallon," Ashley said coquettishly. "It's just for better business." "You heard me. I want Mr. Carrington's shares," Locke replied casually. His attention was now focused on Ashley. The dress the designer had specially matched for her perfectly showcased her strengths. However, that very night, Ashley's dress, which she had just worn once, broke. The quality was not good at all. The next morning, Locke glanced at Ashley. She had fallen asleep at around 3 a.m. and was still sound asleep. Locke packed up and left the apartment. He had a big event to attend to today. Instead of driving his own car, he ran to a parking lot 3 kilometers away and pulled out a modified used car he had just purchased from an illegal parking lot. He drove to the warehouse where the 4 tall-legged women were hiding. He activated the bug in the car and listened to the sounds from there. They were making final preparations. Just after 8 a.m., a white BMW 760 pulled out of the garage. As they passed by, Locke immediately recognized the 4 tall-legged women dressed as men in suits, hats, and sunglasses. Instead of following them immediately, Locke drove to a highway in southern New York to wait. According to the plan he had overheard before, they would quickly flee New York from this road after this robbery. It was the morning rush hour, and the traffic on the road was very busy. Locke turned on the radio in the car and tuned to the local news program. Recently, New York banks were robbed twice in a row, causing a lot of trouble. Many reporters have been waiting in various banks recently, wondering if they would encounter another robbery so that they could report it as soon as possible. His guess turned out to be correct. When it was almost 10 o'clock, the radio station suddenly interrupted with a news report. A bank on East 35th Street in Queens was robbed again. The radio host's tone was very cheerful. Thanks to the generosity of New Yorkers, this kind of thing is a joke in the eyes of many New Yorkers. According to reports, this time the 4 robbers in the BMW 760 are responsible for the heist. Listeners, you heard correctly. These robbers are truly audacious. They've pulled off 3 successful heists in a single week. Conservative estimates put the total haul at over $10 million. The announcer's report was filled with a certain gloating schadenfreude, as if he found it amusing that those damned bankers had lost $18 million, since it wouldn't affect anyone's savings. Armed with this information, Locke focused his attention, silently calculating the speed of the 4 fleeing vehicles, trying to determine when they would arrive. Sensing the time was almost up, Locke started the car, pulled onto the road, and slowly drove forward. Just then, Intense gunfire rang out from the wiretap, followed by a conversation between the four women, who recognized each other's identities. They've actually been targeted. Looks like Darrett's men. I didn't expect that even after dealing with the unlucky policeman and the speeding ant, the four long-legged guys still haven't had it easy. Locke was slightly surprised, but also took it for granted. After all, with tens of millions of dollars at stake, Darrett, the gang leader, wouldn't completely trust his collaborators. Soon, intense gunfire began to emanate from behind. Locke could hear it without even a bug. It was clear they weren't already a short distance behind him. Turning back, Locke saw the four long-legged guys driving the car carrying the money, trapped between two cars, with gun barrels protruding from both windows. Seeing this, Locke immediately pulled his prepared pistol from a bag on the seat beside him and opened both windows. As the three cars passed by, he suddenly pulled the trigger. Bang, 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 2 gunshots rang out in quick succession. The front and rear tires of the car that had been sandwiching the long-legged guys on the right flared one after another. The car swayed, swaying left and right before crashing into the car behind it. Suddenly one of the cars in pursuit disappeared, and the 4 tall-legged men were startled. Then they saw Locke making a gesture to them through the open car window. Vanessa, who was driving, did not have time to think about how this stranger appeared and why he suddenly helped her. She stepped on the accelerator and continued to accelerate. At this time, Locke also found through the rearview mirror that it was not just the 2 cars chasing the tall-legged men, but 2 more were following behind. Someone in the 2 cars stretched his upper body out of the windows of the rear seats of the cars, holding an automatic rifle and firing continuously. Fortunately, in preparation for the bank robbery, the BMW driven by the 4 tall-legged men had been modified to be bulletproof. The bullets landed on the car, leaving only bullet holes on the outer bulletproof steel plate. Chapter 68 Mission accomplished. Things are getting lively, Locke muttered as he sped up, sheathed his pistol, and pulled a grenade from a nearby bag. Unbolting the bolt, he thrust the grenade's hand out the window, silently counting the distance to the pursuing vehicle behind him before releasing it. The grenade fell from Locke's hand to the ground, tumbling several times before landing under the pursuing vehicle. Boom! With a resounding explosion, the pursuing vehicle was blown up in a ball of fire. The car next to him was also impacted, swaying slightly before continuing forward. Perhaps frightened, the driver unconsciously slowed down. Damn it! Those women have accomplices, the driver, only then noticing Locke's car, said. Aim at that guy. Looking in the rearview mirror, Locke saw the occupants of the car pointing their guns at him, and he quickly turned the steering wheel. Bang, bang, bang. A barrage of bullets pelted the road, with several landing in the trunk. Call fire. They were already prepared for grenades. In such a fierce chase, without help from the driver, turning back to fire would be difficult to guarantee accuracy. So, while dodging the vehicles on the road, Locke focused his attention on the interior of the car behind him. The simplest and most basic fire-calling magic quickly ignited the interior of their car, which then spread rapidly throughout the vehicle. The sudden and startling change caused everyone inside to scream in shock, and the driver slammed the accelerator and swerved. In his panic, the car crashed directly into the neighboring vehicle. Only then did Locke turn his attention back to the 4 tall men. The 2 sides were still exchanging fire. Bang! Finally, the tall man in the back shot the driver. Without Locke having to fire, the car crashed through the roadside guardrail and rushed into the nearby wilderness. At this moment, Locke drove up to the car of 4 tall-legged men. Facing the pistol pointed at him, he smiled and greeted, "Hi, now is my chance to meet some of these beautiful ladies." Turning their heads, the tall-legged men finally recognized Locke, the man who had greeted them that day. "Who are you? It doesn't matter. The important thing is that I think we could be friends, beautiful lady." "Your name is Vanessa, right?" Locke said with a smile. "What do you want? Money, or anything else?" "I'm not interested in money," Locke said with a smile. "I just want to help these beautiful ladies with a little problem." His actions were friendly, but Vanessa's next move was far from friendly. Her fiery eyes swept over, a half-smile on her face as she suddenly spoke. The tall-legged man next to her raised his pistol and pulled the trigger at Locke. Bang! The gunshot rang out, and as Locke slammed on the brakes, the bullet landed on the road ahead. The tall-legged man's car accelerated, bypassing the cars in front, and sped away, widening the distance between them. Shaking his head and smiling, Locke knew that the other party had no intention of killing him. The gun was not aimed at the vital parts just now, but just wanted to get away. He did not rush to catch up, but slowed down the car, sensing the direction of the other party, and continued to move forward slowly. About an hour later, following the sensing, Locke came to a dilapidated warehouse, and also saw the car parked here. Looking around for a while, this is an old residential warehouse, which has been abandoned due to years of disrepair. Getting out of the car, Locke entered the warehouse, and saw no one at first. There was silence inside. Locke chuckled and said, "Ms. Vanessa, the takeaway you ordered is here." After a while, 4 tall legs rushed out, and 2 of them pointed guns at Locke. "That's not a very friendly attitude, Ms. Vanessa. Is that how you treat your friends?" Locke said with a smile. "Now put down your guns and let's talk it over." Vanessa's expression was cold. "What's there to talk about? We're not giving you the money. I thought I'd already said I'm not interested in the little money you hid in the car." Locke glanced at the 4 people before him with a smile. "And these 2 ladies, don't be so nervous. Aren't you tired of holding your guns all the time?" The 2 stared at each other for a moment, and then Locke suddenly attacked. 2 baseballs knocked the guns out of their hands, one left and one right. Then he lunged forward and hugged Vanessa. With Locke's immense strength, Vanessa's instinctive resistance was useless. He easily suppressed her struggles and rolled her over. "Oh, don't be so anxious." At this moment, a Lorak pistol appeared in Locke's hand, stopping the others from reaching for their guns. "Can you please kick those toys from your feet over to me?" Vanessa's face grimaced. She had never expected Locke's swiftness, immense strength, and masterful close combat skills. In his hands, she was like a Barbie doll, easily subdued. Locke rested his chin on Vanessa's shoulder and whispered a smile into her ear. "Like I told you, I just wanted to meet these beautiful ladies." This startled the 4 of them, and then a ridiculous thought occurred to them. Is this guy really just thinking this? These tall, muscular men naturally had no idea that helping them escape was Locke's mission. He truly didn't care about the over $10 million. As for his appearance before them, it was because Vanessa's eyes were so charming, and her familiar appearance instilled a sense of playfulness in Locke's heart. As his strength grew in all aspects, Locke became less cautious in many areas, taking on a certain kind of playful attitude. "Okay, here's my contact information. You might be busy right now, but we can get to know each other better sometime." With that, Locke left a card, put away his gun, and left the warehouse. The 4 men looked at each other in bewilderment as they watched Locke's graceful departure. Finally, Vanessa took the card Locke had left and pocketed it. Locke then returned to the New York suburbs and activated a bomb planted on his car. In half an hour, the car would be completely destroyed. Returning to his apartment, Locke stretched his body as he saw the mission complete message. While tracking and eavesdropping on the men was fun, it was still somewhat tiring. As expected, the news on the TV was still about a robbery. There was no way they could track the 4 men at this point. After all, the wanted posters still depicted the robbers as 4 men in suits. By the time the unlucky cop and the speedster woke up tomorrow, they wouldn't have seen Locke. As for the 4 men, there was no telling whether the other officers would believe their story. By the time they realized what was happening, Vanessa and the others would have already left New York and returned to Brazil. Without photos, fingerprints, etc., the police would find nothing even if they searched again. As for whether the New York police would be in trouble later, that was not Locke's concern. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Daddy Joey. To keep it a secret from Tang Wei and Ashley, Locke had been staying out late with them these past few days, and had to get up early the next day, leaving him with very little time to rest. Now that his work was finally done, Locke quickly relaxed and fell into bed for a sound sleep. He didn't wake up until dinner time, when Tang Wei, who had rushed over from get off work, woke him up. He contacted Ashley, who had gone shopping with Monica, and they had dinner together. When the 4 of them arrived at the bar, they saw Chandler sitting at a table and Joey, who was chatting up a blonde girl. Glancing at the girl Joey was chatting up, Locke felt a sense of familiarity, then realized she was Martha from the New York City Major Crimes Unit. She had also appeared in the movie, as the ex-girlfriend of the unlucky cop and the head of the Major Crimes Unit. She must have been under tremendous pressure from the unsolved robbery, And now she was at the bar to get drunk and relax. Joey has a new target, Locke said, approaching Chandler. I haven't seen this girl before, right? Joey said new girls are more exciting. Chandler felt a little depressed. Maybe when this becomes a cafe, I can find another bar and meet some guys who like new things. Ha ha ha, Locke laughed. But I don't think Joey will succeed this time, is that so? Chandler suddenly perked up. Then if Joey steps aside, how about I go up later? Maybe there'll be a chance, Locke chuckled. Find a chance for her to get to know your powerful gun. Martha, who is able to become the head of the major crimes unit, was clearly a very controlling girl. Chandler, influenced by his parents, also had a personality that was somewhat different from that of an average man. It's no coincidence that Chandler ended up with the obsessive-compulsive Monica. Monica also likes to be in control, and the personalities complemented each other perfectly. As he spoke, Joey came back, looking a little disappointed. How is it going? Chandler asked. Maybe she doesn't like my type. Joey shrugged. Failed attempts weren't uncommon for him, so he didn't care. He wandered around the bar, searching for a new target. Chandler was starting to get a little eager, and seeing him, Locke said with a smile, do you want to give it a try? Without waiting for Chandler's response, Locke pulled him up, walked behind Martha, and patted her shoulder. Hey, do you know Chandler? Locke shoved Chandler next to Martha and walked back to Ashley and the others. Wow, looks like someone's got it, Monica said with a smile. No big deal, Locke, mimicking Barney's usual tactic from Romance, smiled. Chandler just needs a little courage. I heard from Alice and Ashley that you've been really busy the last couple of days, often gone all morning, Monica said with a malicious smile. I've been meeting an elder every morning these past few days, Locke said with a smile. I met him 2 years ago when I came to New York for the Mathematical Olympiad. He asked me to look after his kids. Locke brought Balthazar out. Over the past 2 years, Balthazar had become a true stay-at-home dad, frequently helping the neighbors take care of Dave and even becoming Dave's godfather. I didn't expect you had another friend in New York. Which school is he a teacher at? Hearing they met at the Mathematical Olympiad, Monica instinctively assumed Balthazar was a teacher. He's not a teacher. But he has very profound and unique insights into history, Locke explained. Okay, Joey shrugged, raising his glass. I can't stand children, really, Locke looked at Joey. I thought you might accidentally get a girl pregnant in the future and end up marrying her. No, Playboy Joey will never stop, Joey retorted firmly. I'm Joey, maybe, Locke said non-committally. If a girl ever walked up to Joey with his child, who knows, he might actually become a stay-at-home dad. Faced with Locke's doubts, Joey perked up and began looking for a target for tonight with a more positive attitude. He was a playboy, Joey, and he would never settle for a single girl. His motto was to leave after just one night. The next morning, Locke and Ashley returned to Fairview. The community college he had enrolled Ashley in was right next to Fairview, making it quite convenient. Driving to their house, they quickly saw Linda and Peggy open the door. You're finally back. Barry went home early for work. As a dentist, Barry couldn't stay away for long. After all, he had a lot of appointments every day. If he stayed away for too long, his clients might be poached by other dentists. Linda stayed to make some final arrangements. They felt Locke was more reliable than any temporary guardian. If Locke hadn't met the federal age requirement, they would have simply appointed him. After introducing Ashley to Linda and Peggy and putting the luggage in the room, everyone went to sit down in the living room. It's my fault. I spent too much time outside, Locke apologized to Linda and Peggy. It's okay. It's just that Peggy will have to trouble you in the future. We finally chose Susan as Peggy's temporary guardian. Susan is great, Locke nodded. She's very enthusiastic and responsible, indeed, but our first choice was actually Bree. She was willing, but Peggy didn't like her very much, so, I think Bree is a little pretentious, and Julie is much better than Andrew and Daniel. Peggy brought over the brew tea. Andrew and the others' grades are not much better than the monkeys in the zoo, Peggy. Linda glared at Peggy. Thank you, Locke took the teacup handed to him by Peggy. Since Peggy doesn't like Andrew and Daniel, then let's do this. This will avoid any unpleasantness in the future. After all, it's best for her and her temporary guardian to get along happily. Barry and I think so too, Linda nodded. Now that you're back, I want to invite Susan and Julie over for dinner tonight so we can have a final chat. That's fine with me. Locke had no reason to refuse. Then it's settled. Chapter 70 Daily Excess. I can pick up Peggy on my way to school. She lives with me, too. If I need anything else, I'll have to trouble you, Locke said to Susan after dinner. It's my duty. Honestly, I didn't expect you and Barry to be so close. Susan initially suspected that Locke and Peggy were siblings, but after learning more about the Swanson family, she realized that wasn't the case. Locke's a very reliable person. Barry and I have known him for 2 years, and he's always looked after Peggy at school. After all, you know, Peggy was only 9 when she started high school. If it weren't for Locke, she'd probably have been bullied by the mean girls at school, Linda replied with a smile. The past 2 years had made them extremely confident in Locke, otherwise, Peggy wouldn't have let him live with her. I'm going back tomorrow. Summer vacation is almost over, and I'm going to my mother's to pick up my other daughter. From now on, Peggy's in your care, don't worry. Julie and I both like Peggy. Wow, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have known there was such a bright child. Now Julie asks her for help with her homework? That's perfect, Linda said with a smile. The overall atmosphere of the conversation was very harmonious. The next day, Ashley and Susan, whom she had just met, went to get their hair done and went shopping, while Locke drove Linda to the airport. After Linda's plane took off and they drove back, Peggy, sitting in the passenger seat, breathed a sigh of relief. These past few days have been exhausting. Meeting so many interested people every day makes me feel like a circus clown. Ha ha ha, there's no such a pretty and lovely clown, Locke smiled and rubbed Peggy's head. Since you find it troublesome, then take a good rest for 2 days. I'll take you to register. You'll probably run into Sheldon then, he told me he'd go to Beverly's house a few days in advance. Leonard even called me. He felt like a child abandoned by his mother, Peggy said with a grin. Indeed, with Sheldon around, Leonard's future will be difficult, Locke chuckled at the thought of the possible scenario. I've got an interesting idea, Peggy suddenly said. Maybe after we register, we can go visit Beverly's house. Compared to Sheldon, who considered Peggy his lifelong enemy, Peggy had always found Sheldon quite interesting. After all, there weren't many people she could truly get along with. Besides Locke and Sheldon, even Leonard, who often contacted her, was a bit behind. It was just a shame for Leonard. Locke could sense he had some secret feelings for Peggy. Ever since they'd met, he'd often called her and even kept in touch online, but judging by Peggy's attitude, the chances of success were slim. As long as you can handle 2 Sheldons, Locke shrugged. Back home, Locke parked his car in the garage and saw a blonde woman standing on the curb. Hey, Edie, how's your new place coming along? Locke took the initiative to greet her. Edie was a real estate agent a few blocks away, and it was through her that Locke had chosen this house. It's going pretty well. Thanks to the insurance company's willingness to pay, otherwise the house I got from my ex-husband would have been completely ruined, Edie smiled. Are you getting used to living here? It feels good. The people here are very welcoming. That's right, everyone likes a cute guy like you. Edie looked at Locke with a bit of pity. She had a wide range of interests. But this was her first time meeting a man as handsome as Locke. He made her feel happy the moment they met. Unfortunately, she'd tried before, when Locke was buying a house, but received no response. Locke, who had seen what was on Edie's mind, responded with a few words and returned to the room. He went to the kitchen to boil a pot of water, and then heard a knock on the door. Hey, I'm here to see Peggy. Julie, standing at the door, smiled and raised the book in her hand. I just saw you guys come back, and I wanted to ask Peggy a question about school. Locke's eyes rolled. Peggy just went upstairs to rest. If you don't mind, I can answer you. Really? That's fine. Julie nodded and followed Locke to the living room to sit down. Would you like something to drink, coffee or tea? Locke asked. Tea is fine, Julie answered politely. What's the question? Locke brought the brewed tea over and picked up the book Julie brought. It's about math. Julie pointed to a problem. Peggy told me about it yesterday, but I just can't understand some parts. It's nothing. Peggy is just not used to how to explain it to ordinary people. Locke took a look. This problem should be like this. In less than 10 minutes, Julie figured it out completely. Wow, after hearing what you said, I understand it. Thank you for your help. It's nothing. You can come to me if you have any questions in the future, Locke said with a chuckle. That's great. My mom isn't good at math either, but she's an artist, Julie said. She mainly illustrates books. That sounds great. Maybe I could ask her for help, Locke said with a smile. My latest novel is coming out soon. Maybe I could ask her to illustrate it." "Really? You're a writer?" Julie asked in surprise. "What kind of novel?" "The Arcane Throne, a fantasy novel about magic, mostly liked by boys." "Sounds interesting. If you're interested, I have a published copy here. You can take a look." "Thank you very much. It's also a good opportunity for my mom to see it." "Well, I think if she wants to take on the job of illustrating your books, it would be helpful if she'd read your novel." "No problem. Wait here. The book is in the study." "I'll get it." Locke stood up and went upstairs. When he arrived, he saw Peggy sitting at the desk. "You're lucky today," Peggy said to Locke, who was looking for a book in the bookshelf. Ashley happened to be at the hair salon, so she didn't disturb you. I'm just helping out." "Julie is still too young for me," Locke said as he took the book downstairs and handed it to Julie. "This is the first volume. Take a look. If you like it, you can ask me for the second volume." "Thank you." Julie nodded, stood up and took the book. "I have something else to do, so I'll be leaving now." "Okay." Locke didn't try to stop her, but opened the door and saw her off. As he said, Julie was indeed a little young for him now, but she didn't have to wait too long. Chapter 71 Farm. Every morning, Locke would get up and run. With his current level of fitness, simple exercise alone wouldn't improve it. He simply needed to maintain a regular daily workout to maintain flexibility. Meditation battles could gain combat experience, but it also required physical coordination and consistent exercise to coordinate his combat awareness and movements. Occasionally, when passing by Mr. Solis's house, he'd keep an eye out for the lawnmower named John. He'd already known in the plot that Mr. Solis's wife had been having an affair for over a year, but even now, seeing the lawnmower, Locke still felt a bit of gossip. He'd already decided not to mess with Gabrielle, but it wasn't just women who enjoyed gossip. Men were just as likely, especially in this case. Locke's house was separated from Mr. Solis's by a single household, and one day, while returning from a run, he saw the lawnmower named John enter Mr. Solis's room. Honestly, if a husband faced this situation in the East, they would normally divorce. Unless it was about the children, the couple would likely remain estranged. But as the plot unfolds, Mr. Solis actually forgives his wife. Only the United States would dare to film such a plot. After returning home, showering, and changing clothes, Locke went to the attic garden, reading a book while occasionally glancing at Mr. Solis's house. The lawnmower was still on the lawn in front of the house, only halfway through its work, but over half an hour had passed, and John, the mower, hadn't emerged from his room. This made Locke wonder. Mr. Solis worked so hard, earned so much money, provided his wife with a comfortable life, and lavished her with expensive gifts. But for what? Truly, relying solely on material possessions to maintain a relationship wasn't a reliable strategy, especially since Gabrielle was a model. Even the people of the East knew how chaotic this world was. Of course, Locke had no intention of defending Mr. Solis. After all, the other party eventually found out and chose to forgive. Both sides recognized their mistakes, made adjustments, and ultimately lived happily ever after. In his previous life, when Locke saw this plot, he couldn't help but complain. He could only say that the ubiquity of American persuasive advertising had distorted people's values. A while later, Ashley called Locke for breakfast. Seeing that John hadn't come out yet, Locke lamented the youth's energy and quick response. After breakfast, Locke returned to his study to read. Nearing noon, he stood up and peeked out the window. He couldn't see Mr. Solis's house, but the lawnmower was still in its original position. An idea struck Locke, who went upstairs, picked out a bottle of wine, and walked to Mr. Solis's door. With a sense of malice in his heart, Locke pressed the doorbell repeatedly. At first, the other party didn't answer, but knowing someone was home, he pressed a few more times. After a while, Gabrielle's voice finally reached the room. "Who's that?" Sensing the flurry of activity in the conversation, Locke smiled. "I'm Locke Lee, who moved in a few days ago. I heard you were a model in New York. Ashley really likes modeling and wants to get to know you better." "Okay, please wait a moment. I'll be right there." After waiting for about 10 seconds, the door opened, revealing Gabrielle, dressed in black silk pajamas, her long black hair flowing freely. She exuded a lazy, contented air. He offered her a glass of red wine as a gift and chatted casually for a few moments before John, the lawnmower, approached from the backyard, a pair of shears in hand. He was sweating profusely, his hair damp with sweat. Pretending not to notice that Gabrielle hadn't even zipped up his pants, Locke complimented her on her garden and lawn. He couldn't help but laugh at her feigned composure. Especially when he mentioned that she mowed the lawn and garden 2 or 3 times a week, he could only suppress a laugh. A normal person wouldn't need to mow their lawn so diligently. Feeling that it was almost time, Locke casually suggested they go for a morning run together sometime before saying goodbye and leaving. On the way home, his whimsical thoughts were immensely satisfied. He even maliciously thought about taking a photo or something, perhaps giving it to Gabrielle as a keepsake. Fortunately, he suppressed this wicked thought shortly after it occurred to him. However, a thought suddenly crossed his mind, like that of Ms. Mona from across the street, and the fleeting thought resurfaced. Before Locke could figure out how to carry forward the legacy of the Weewer people and contribute to their cultural heritage, he received news that a suitable farm had been found. The idea of buying a farm had come to Locke a few days ago, sparked by the treasure beneath the Holy Trinity Church. The top portion of the treasure had been stored in Locke's storage space, while the rest, along with piles of gold coins, was locked away in the basement. But this was only a small portion of the treasure. The majority would have to be stored in several rented warehouses for the time being. The security of these warehouses was questionable. Not only could they be discovered and stolen if accidentally exposed, resulting in a significant loss of money, but the primary concern was the potential for investigation. The joy and excitement of his treasure haul faded, and Locke began to worry about the various potential problems it might cause. Over the past period, he had sold a small amount of antiques and artwork, as well as some gold coins, through various channels. The proceeds were now held in an overseas company account. Considering the sheer volume of the treasure, this pace of disposal was truly alarming. The longer the process took, the greater the likelihood of an incident. He had been mulling over how to properly house the treasure, and a couple of days ago, he finally came up with an idea: purchasing a manor or farm of his own. Existing manors often have basements or vaults, but most don't fully meet his requirements. Ultimately, Locke opted to purchase a farm and then build a suitable manor house himself. Naturally, the farm couldn't be too far away for convenience, so he opted for a location in New Jersey. He outlined his requirements, and the task naturally began. New Jersey borders New York, and some of its local tax rates are among the lowest in the East. This was a key reason Locke chose to purchase a farm there. A salesperson named Dylan arrived in Fairview and, while handing Locke information, he eloquently described the 3,600-acre farm, which boasts mountains, lakes, forests, swamps, and even snow-capped mountains in winter. Having mountains, forests, and swamps within a farm's boundaries isn't necessarily a good idea. Federal regulations require these areas to maintain their natural beauty and not be arbitrarily altered for environmental protection purposes. Consequently, these areas can't be used for agricultural production, meaning they can't generate value. Yet, annual taxes would still be substantial, resulting in minimal annual revenue. Even if disaster strikes, the farm could easily result in losses. From an investment perspective, purchasing such a farm isn't a good investment, making it unpopular with potential investors. The current owner has had it on the market for 6 months and hasn't sold it yet. However, Locke didn't initially intend to operate the farm. Based on the information about the farm's surroundings, he envisioned it as a great place to spend the summer. Chapter 72. I can go back to my hometown in France. Looking at the information Dylan had brought, Locke became increasingly interested. He said, "The descriptions aren't very intuitive. When can I go see it in person?" "Anytime," Dylan beamed. Most people who invest in farms would give up after seeing the information, or be picky and bargain hunting, but judging by Locke's attitude, he didn't seem to consider the possibility of losing money. "Tomorrow, then. Are you interested, dear?" Locke glanced at Ashley beside him. "What's so good about a farm?" Ashley shrugged. She grew up in a small town and had milked cows on nearby farms, so she didn't find the smelly farms that appealing. She preferred the mansion she'd visited at a party in New York a few days earlier. She felt like living there would satisfy her whole life. "I'd love to go see it with you," Peggy said with interest. At her age, she was naturally drawn to new things, and compared to Ashley, who grew up in a small town and was accustomed to farms, she was more eager to see them. "Then Peggy and I can go over tomorrow." Locke glanced at Ashley and chuckled. "It won't be long anyway. We'll be back tonight. You can go hang out and chat with the neighbors, they're just some old men and aunties." "What's there to talk about?" Ashley curled her lips. "I might as well stay home and watch TV," Not necessarily. From what I hear, Gabrielle is a famous model. She's even been on the cover of a New York fashion magazine. Peggy smiled. Famous model? Are you serious? Ashley's ears perked up at the thought and she looked at Peggy. Of course, everyone in the neighborhood knows. From what I hear, she's gathering with her friends at Gabrielle's house tomorrow to play cards and chat. Do you want to join? Peggy said. I like playing cards too. Ashley nodded repeatedly. What do I have to do to join in? Leave it to me. I'll call Julie. Her mother, Susan, will be there tomorrow. I'll ask Susan to help. She'll definitely agree, Peggy said confidently. That's a deal, Ashley quickly replied. This is the farm situation. If you're satisfied, I'll take you to meet the seller, Dylan told Locke. Dylan took Locke on a tour of the farm, exploring its various locations. They went for a ride in the stables and had a barbecue outdoors at noon. It was truly wonderful. Okay, Locke glanced at Peggy, whose face still radiated excitement, and nodded in agreement. Dylan then led Locke and Peggy to the seller's residence, a French-style manor house with a blue roof and white walls that looked picturesque from a distance. Upon entering, a vast garden and lawn opened up. In front of the main building stood an artistic fountain, and in the backyard there was a swimming pool. Tall, upright palm trees lined the perimeter of the fence. This didn't resemble the typical American farmer's residence at all. Instead, it felt like a small manor house, devoid of the ostentatious air of luxury, more of a low-key luxury. The entire yard, spanning over 6,000 square meters, was meticulously laid out, with large expanses of freshly mowed grass that still lingered. Locke parked his car at the gate, got out, and walked inside, observing the surroundings. Besides the main building, there was an adjacent annex, where the servants usually lived. Locke hadn't expected the farmhouse to be so beautiful. Arriving at the main gate, they were greeted by the landlady, who was in her 30s, and her daughter. The daughter looked young, wearing a black lace dress. She had a nice figure and good looks, but her only flaw was her thick lips, likely a cosmetic procedure. Thick lips are a common American aesthetic, especially after the release of Julia Roberts' Pretty Woman last year, which attracted the admiration of many American women. However, Locke saw this as a flaw, a pity he felt, as thick lips were not to his liking. You're very welcome. You've probably seen the farm, the landlady said, her elegant demeanor, blonde hair, aristocratic air, and a French accent. It feels good, Locke nodded. The environment is very good, but it may not be easy to make a profit as a farm. The hostess smiled, invited Locke and others into the room, and began to introduce the manor. When my husband and I got married and came to the United States, we bought this farm in the second year. The main reason was to have a place to relax near New York. I liked the scenery here very much. In 1985, the original house caught fire, and I asked someone to design and build this manor. I no longer used wooden buildings, but used the style of my hometown. I even renovated it at the beginning of last year, and it took a lot of energy. It was only because my husband passed away unexpectedly that I planned to return to France to settle down, so I thought about selling some fixed assets in the United States. Please accept my condolences, madam. Locke politely expressed his regret. This lady usually lives a life of luxury and is well maintained. Because of her age, wrinkles can be seen at the corners of her eyes, but she is still very attractive and exudes mature charm. This manor is beautifully designed. Madam, you have excellent taste. I haven't lived here long since the renovations, and as you can see, everything looks practically brand new. The hostess continued to describe the house. It has 3 floors, with a fireplace. The entire 3rd floor is a large library and a well-equipped gym. There are 12 rooms in total, 2 offices, 2 reception rooms, 2 dressing rooms, 10 bathrooms, and a large bath. The basement is vast, almost as large as the 1st floor, with a dedicated utility room and wine cellar, and an adjacent garage that can accommodate 6 cars. The total area is 39,000 square feet. Over the past 6 months, people have been coming to see the farm, and she has accumulated some experience. The conditions here are excellent, and the farm is beautiful, but its proximity to New York makes it a poor investment for a farm. If you prefer a farm, there are plenty of luxury homes in New York, or you can choose to travel farther afield for more scenic views. The conditions are good, but it lacks any outstanding advantages in any way, making it somewhat worthless, which is why the farm has not yet been sold. As the other party introduced the property, Locke automatically converted it in his head. 39,000 square feet is roughly equivalent to 3,600 square meters. The United States doesn't have a concept of common areas. Building area is calculated based on the actual living space within the unit, often excluding areas like basements and garages. This layout essentially met Locke's needs, and he felt like he had found a treasure. This building has 3 floors. I just looked at the layout from the outside, and there's a loft. Yes, it's beautifully furnished, perfect for sunbathing and relaxing. I'll show you around the room, the hostess greeted warmly. Then glanced at her daughter. In the past, her daughter had always been reluctant to come to viewing, feeling like she was interrupting her outings, but this time she was surprisingly well behaved. After her husband passed away and inherited an estate, she began disposing of some dispensable assets in the United States, preparing to return to her hometown of Paris. In addition to some solid financial investments and assets in the United States, her husband also owned valuable assets in France, including wineries, farms, and castles. With the proceeds from the sale of these assets in the United States, she had recently purchased a hotel in Paris with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Once she finally sells this farm, she will be ready to return to France. Chapter 73 Decision. Unlike her American husband, the hostess came from an upper-class Parisian family. Her husband had relied on some support from her family to thrive in France. After her husband's death, she struggled with business ventures. With no support in the United States, she was targeted by many hungry thieves. She decided it would be better to return to Paris, where she would have the support of her parents and family, and at least avoid unfair treatment. Entering the house, Locke immediately saw the magnificent living room. The space between the first and second floors was separated by a grand, 3 to 4 meter high chandelier. The overall ambience of the hall resembled beige with a touch of gold, and the floor was decorated with black marble tiles, giving it a feel comparable to the banquet halls of 5-star hotels. Compared to the currently popular American-style lavish interiors, the decor of this building is French, more refined yet less extravagant, creating a romantic and elegant atmosphere. The rooms were sparsely furnished, giving the house a slightly empty feel. The dining room featured a long oak table that seated 12, exquisitely crafted, and meticulously designed. Everything pleased Locke, saving him the trouble of hiring a new designer. He nodded and asked, "Will all the furniture and furnishings in the room stay?" "Yes, they're heavy and expensive, so taking them away would be a hassle. They also don't fit the style of our new house in Paris. If the buyer doesn't need them, we'll just have to leave them where they are." Locke nodded and went up to the second floor, where all the rooms were located. There was also an office at the corner of the stairs. The third floor was a spacious library with a large collection of books and a well-equipped gym, which surprised Locke. The attic was designed as a place for afternoon tea and was fully equipped. Finally, Locke took a look at the basement. It was divided into several rooms, including a safe with a metal door, which took up a quarter of the room. It was designed by a Swiss insurance company and was currently empty. He roughly estimated the basement's area and found it was large enough to accommodate the treasure. After all, the large, space-consuming items would remain in their original locations, and smaller items could be easily accommodated using space management techniques. Pondering this, the group wandered into the wine cellar. The wine cellar also held a large selection of fine wines. While there weren't any top-tier items, they were all high-end, and they seemed reluctant to move. The hostess said they could all stay, as she didn't have enough space in her Paris house. Locke thought to himself, what a spendthrift. This was the first time in 2 lifetimes that he had encountered such a high-class world. He had become a top-tier tycoon so recently that he couldn't understand what he considered a wasteful behavior. Of course, the hostess saw all these items as part of the purchase price of the farm. Even at a discounted price, it still made the farm's price seem a bit high. Few people could afford tens of millions of dollars, so it was common for some luxury estates to remain on the market for a year or two before being sold. Alone in the attic, Locke and the hostess began haggling over the farm's environment, annual returns, and the layout of the estate. He didn't dislike the farm's appearance, but he also hoped for a discount on the price. Because of the aforementioned flaws, the farm's average annual income was only $300,000 to $400,000. The estate itself was the real value. The final bid was $38 million. $38 million wasn't a small sum in the early 1990s. Considering the value of farms and estates, it was about the same, and even offered some discounts. But Locke still wanted to save a little. The dollar wasn't experiencing rapid inflation yet, so it was still quite valuable. Neither of them was willing to give in, and as they were arguing, he suddenly noticed a faint hint of purple beneath the hostess's skirt. It was still summer, and the weather was hot, so no one was wearing much. The wicker chairs on the attic terrace were high in front and low in the back, giving Locke a good view. He thought to himself that these European ladies were truly wild at heart, as befitted their Parisian roots. Outwardly, Locke maintained a serious demeanor, but a strange thrill lingered. At such moments, it was inevitable to recall the earnest teachings of teachers from a past life, as well as the widow-related study materials. After a while of discussion, the hostess picked up the teapot to pour another cup. Just as she was about to set it down, a flying insect flitted by, startling her and causing the tea to splash onto her. Putting down the cup, the hostess said, "Sorry, it looks like a bee. I've always been afraid of insects and mice. Please wait a moment while I wash my hands." "No problem, go ahead." Locke stood up and saw her off, his thoughts returning to the farm. He was satisfied in every way. After all, the farm's income wasn't his primary concern. He was more interested in finding a place to collect treasures and relax during his free time. This place was a good fit, but the key was the price. Coming up with $38 million wasn't a stretch for him. With over $10 million in cash on hand, he could easily acquire it by selling some of his shares or tapping into Skyfund's funds. However, he didn't want to sell shares in companies with promising futures. Furthermore, selling large quantities of shares in the stock market was not easy. A single mistake could easily impact the stock price. He currently held significant stakes in companies like Intel, Microsoft, and Wells Fargo, and buying them back would cost him more. Mobilizing Skyfund's funds would inevitably affect his future investment plans. The 1992 British pound crisis didn't erupt immediately, it had been lurking for a long time. Prior to this, the economies of various European countries were facing difficulties, and there were countless opportunities along the way. Soros rose to fame by attacking the British pound, and Locke naturally wouldn't miss this golden opportunity. Now was the perfect time to enter the market. The funds from Skyfund and those from overseas companies were all set aside for this purpose. Therefore, he could only borrow money from the bank, temporarily paying some interest, which was more cost-effective than other methods. After all, holding company shares would bring in annual dividends. As for the price, after just some probing, he should be able to negotiate a price of $1 or $2 million. With this in mind, Locke made up his mind. "Locke, aren't you guys done talking yet?" At that moment, Peggy ran up to the attic. Seeing Locke alone, she asked, "Where did the lady go?" "She went to the bathroom," Locke replied casually. "Then, what do you think of this place?" "It's quite nice. I think it's quite interesting. The estate is beautiful. We can come here during summer vacation. It should be nice." Peggy expressed her opinion and then asked, "Are you worried about the money?" "No, I'm ready to get a loan from the bank. It's not like I won't make money next year." Locke smiled and rubbed Peggy's head, feeling like he was used to this gesture. Peggy was also a smart girl and knew more about Locke than the Swansons. Locke had never told her how much money he had, but from the snippets she'd overheard during business phone calls and from what she'd gotten from Ashley, she knew Locke had at least hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, but he had never told his parents. Seeing Locke's relaxed demeanor, Peggy no longer worried. "That's great. I was thinking of coming here during summer vacation to learn horseback riding." Chapter 74 School Opening Report. After the hostess returned, Locke and the other party discussed the matter further, ultimately settling on a price of $36.5 million. A letter of intent was signed, and it was now Dylan's turn to get busy. Such a large contract, and the substantial bonus alone, was enough to energize Dylan and expedite the process. Locke obtained a $40 million bank loan, secured by some stock. The process went so smoothly that the Citibank account manager was eager for Locke to borrow more. Back in Fairview that evening, Ashley regretted not going along to see Peggy's farm estate over dinner as she recounted her experiences. Fortunately, there would be opportunities in the future. Locke agreed to find a chance to visit the farm for a few days after the transfer. Ashley then recounted playing cards at Gabrielle's house and running into Mr. Solis's mother, who had come to visit the previous day. Mr. Solis's mother is a MasterCard player, and in just a few moments, I've lost over $300. It's truly terrifying. Ashley's expression still held a lingering sense of fear. She usually used Locke's credit card for clothes and other purchases, and she didn't have much cash on hand. It was all given to her by Samantha when she left. Locke had never given her any cash, and she had spent quite a bit herself these days. In just a short while, she'd lost over $300, a third of her remaining funds. She considered waiting for a night when they were alone together to act coquettishly and get some pocket money. Over the next few days, Locke processed some of the documents Tang Wei had brought and arranged investments in overseas companies and Sky Fund. Finally, it was time to register for Princeton University. The university was extremely welcoming to Peggy, and Dr. Gates from the mathematics department even waited in the principal's office. Originally, Peggy and Sheldon were to choose physics, but perhaps influenced by Locke, Peggy decided on mathematics early on. As agreed, both Peggy and Locke received full scholarships, though Peggy also received a living allowance, while Locke received none. He didn't mind the small sums. Dr. Gates treated both of them with great respect, and along with the principal, he praised them, especially Peggy, describing them as valuable assets to the school. The principal even said they had a separate dormitory for Peggy, free of charge. Peggy didn't say anything about needing it, simply accepting the key from the principal. Having a place to rest on campus was quite nice. Leaving the principal's office, the two walked along the school streets. Peggy said, "Would you like to go see my assigned dorm now?" "Yes, I can have someone clean it up and see what I need to bring back next time I come," Locke agreed. As they arrived at the dormitory, Locke, watching the girls walking towards him in towels, suddenly regretted his decision. "It's a co-ed dorm. Maybe I should have taken a room." The two quickly found Peggy's room and unlocked it with a key they had been given. The inside seemed to have been specially cleaned, and a faint smell of disinfectant could be smelled. It was completely different from other dormitories that had only been hastily tidied. It seemed that the principal cared about Peggy very much. "The dormitory is very clean. It seems that we only need to buy a few things," Locke said. "It is indeed still lacking bedding and some common clothes. You can bring them directly next time you come to school." Peggy looked around her new dormitory and felt very satisfied. Locke stood at the door and glanced at the dormitory opposite. There was a girl changing clothes inside. The door of the dormitory was half open, and the scenery could still be seen vaguely. The girl looked up and noticed Locke. "Hi." The other party did not close the door, nor did she curse. Instead, she opened the half-open door and greeted Locke, allowing Locke to appreciate the scenery that could only be seen on the beach. "Hi, Locke Lee." Meeting the other's gaze, Locke introduced himself with a smile. "Freshman, mathematics, Elizabeth Plimpton, senior, physics." The other introduced herself, then asked, "Do you live across the street?" If Locke remembered correctly, this Elizabeth Plimpton seemed to be the future female physics PhD. Leonard and her had spent a night and a morning together, and because they couldn't afford the pay, Howard the delivery man and Rajesh the landlord had to be added. "Ah, this is my friend's dorm," Locke replied, recalling the story. Just then, Peggy, after checking the private bathroom, arrived at the door. "She's your friend," Elizabeth said, looking at Locke with a hint of surprise. "Peggy Swanson, like me, is in the mathematics department. Her parents are my friends, and they asked me to look after her at school," Locke said. "This is Elizabeth. She lives across the street." Elizabeth looked at Peggy carefully, then remembered what she had heard a few days ago. The school would have two super geniuses, only 11 years old, and Peggy was obviously one of them. She understood the existence of geniuses because she was one of them. She'd started college at 15, studied for 2 years, and was now preparing to graduate early to pursue a master's degree. But Peggy's age was a bit beyond her expectations. Peggy didn't seem impressed by Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, in turn, seemed uninterested in her. After a brief greeting, Elizabeth closed the dorm door. "Wow!" Just then, an exclamation came from the side. Locke turned his head and saw a handsome white man. He said to Locke, "What a beautiful sight, isn't it?" Locke shrugged. "I'm Ben Trice, freshman biology student." The man extended his hand. "Locke Lee, freshman math student." Locke smiled and said, "Are you interested in biology?" "I want to apply to medical school," the man said. "I'm very interested in medicine." Locke nodded in understanding. Countless students in the United States strive to become doctors from as early as middle school. There are no undergraduate medical programs in the United States. Doctors need to apply to medical school after graduation, and studying a related major during college also gives them an advantage when applying. As for the supposed interest in medicine, most people are actually interested in money. After all, persuading someone to study medicine is a crime syndicate. If it weren't for the money, few would be interested in the hard work of studying medicine. After the two chatted for a while, two more men, one fat and one thin, emerged from the dormitory behind him. Their attire and expressions revealed the typical nerdishness of the man. The fat man, somewhat familiarly, greeted Locke. "I'm Michael Duncan, and this is Cam Jordan. We three are good friends. Did you know each other before?" "Looks like you're lucky to be assigned to the same room," Locke said with a smile. "Ken asked someone to change dorms," the fat man Michael said with a smile. "Want to go out and explore campus together?" "There are so many beautiful girls there," Michael said, winking at himself. For some nerds, they are usually able to speak freely with people of the same sex, but they are prone to hesitating in front of beautiful women. "I'd love to agree, but I have something else to do." Locke took Peggy's hand. "Maybe next time we have a chance." "No problem." Michael glanced at Peggy. He had already received information from his senior, and he recognized this talented young woman, but it wasn't on his radar. He smiled and patted Locke on the shoulder, winking at him. "If you're interested, come see me. I have a lot of information." "Thank you," Locke smiled faintly. "But that's not necessary. Don't be embarrassed." As the group headed outside, Michael continued, "You know, university is a battlefield. It's always better to be quick." "Yeah," the skinny guy, Ken, interrupted. "If you're late, someone else will grab the valuable resources." Locke's mouth twitched, wanting to say that he really didn't need to study the information, just look at the charisma value on the system panel. He should be worrying about how to refuse. But he also knew not to show off too much, otherwise he wouldn't know how they would react. There was no telling how the initial good impression of charisma would quickly reverse. The nerd's attitude towards Locke's impressive record was always complex, a mixture of envy and jealousy, and especially those who were jealous and even resentful. "We can find a time to meet tomorrow. College is a fresh start, and we'll definitely have a happy college life," Michael announced with a smile. Ken nodded, and Locke could only smile silently. He reached the dormitory building, took Peggy's hand, and said goodbye to them. Chapter 75 Neighborhood Relations. With a few days left before classes officially started, Locke and Peggy agreed to go to Leonard's house. As previously confirmed over the phone, Sheldon and Mary would arrive that afternoon. So, after lunch, they planned to go to Leonard's house. Meanwhile, at the airport, hearing the beeping sound, Sheldon helplessly explained to the security officer, "That was just a coin Billy put in my nose. He's my neighbor's kid, and I used to help him with his studies so he wouldn't have to repeat a grade. I like Billy's work," Missy interjected. The security officer heard Sheldon's explanation clearly, but as per protocol, he and George and the others who had come to escort him to the other side for further inspection. During the inspection, Sheldon kept chattering, "I understand and appreciate your behavior, but please don't forget to wear gloves." "Thank you." "He is like this." Sighing, George explained helplessly, "We encountered this problem every time we took him on a plane before." After hearing this, Missy felt very unbalanced. "Why has Sheldon already taken a plane several times, but I have never taken one until now, and I want to go together?" George shrugged his shoulders. In front of outsiders, he was unwilling to say that their family's poor finances did not allow the family to travel together by plane. The cost of Mary sending Sheldon there this time was provided by the university. The security officer nodded, thinking that maybe he shouldn't bother with the child, but he didn't expect that little Sheldon said to Missy while being inspected, "Don't worry, although you are my twin sister, with your IQ, you will definitely not be able to become the most valuable scientist to mankind like me in the future. You can only work in service jobs such as flight attendants or waiters, and then you will have plenty of opportunities to fly on planes." George, who was standing next to him, noticed that the security officer's expression, which had originally relaxed, had changed again, and hurriedly explained, "He didn't mean that. He respects your work very much." "That's right," Mary also quickly added, "He likes people who work in uniforms the most." "That's true." Little Sheldon didn't realize his parents' intentions, and had no idea of the possible danger. He nodded without any expression. "Although everyone knows that your simple work cannot be compared with that of scientists in terms of contribution to mankind, I do like the well-organized work process," and, seeing that the situation was critical, George quickly covered little Sheldon's mouth and glared at him. "Shut up, Sheldon." "But, stop talking," Mary glared at Sheldon, fearing he'd say anything more and get in trouble with the airport staff. Missy's mood suddenly brightened when she saw this. She watched the security personnel meticulously go through the entire process, their movements perfectly standardized and every step meticulously executed. This made Sheldon uncomfortable, but because of his parents, she had to suppress her emotion, so she wasn't in any hurry to get him home. Meanwhile, Locke and Peggy drove up to Leonard's house. Leonard's father opened the door. "Hello, Alfred," Locke and Peggy greeted with a smile. "Hello, Locke and Peggy," Alfred ushered them inside. "Leonard got up early to get ready when he heard you were coming. You're here, come in and sit down." Leonard ran over to greet them as they entered. "It looks like you've been waiting a long time." Locke glanced at Peggy, sensing that Leonard was always more active than usual when it came to matters involving Peggy. "Where's Beverly?" Alfred asked. "Mom's getting ready to pick up Sheldon from the airport," Leonard said, a little annoyed. "Mrs. Cooper said no, this is social etiquette." "I don't remember ever teaching you such bad manners, Leonard," Beverly said, having just come downstairs. Leonard could only lower his head, mentally cursing Sheldon once more. Ever since Beverly spotted Sheldon, she'd quickly focused all her attention on him. Coupled with their similar personalities, Leonard felt completely ignored and filled with jealousy. If it weren't for his naturally optimistic nature, and the ability to constantly connect with Locke and Peggy to counteract these negative emotions, even someone as optimistic as Leonard might have turned to the dark side. He'd become somewhat familiar with Leonard's family, and they sat in the living room chatting. Locke, Peggy, and Alfred did most of the talking, with Beverly occasionally interjecting on topics of interest. Leonard sat somewhat reservedly next to Peggy, occasionally stealing glances and agreeing with her. After a while, Beverly pushed her glasses up and glanced at the living room clock. "It's a pleasure to talk to you all, but I have to go pick up Sheldon and his mother, Ms. Mary. Alfred will take care of you." With Beverly gone, the atmosphere in the living room seemed to lighten up. Alfred checked the time and announced he was going to prepare dinner. Leonard invited the two to his room to play chess. It wasn't until Beverly returned from the airport that the three of them returned downstairs to greet young Sheldon and Mary. Young Sheldon was overjoyed to attend Princeton and was in high spirits the entire way until he saw Locke and Peggy. Sheldon considered Peggy a formidable rival, and he felt uncomfortable whenever he saw her. Locke constantly criticized him, bringing Sheldon to the brink of tears several times. Young Sheldon's reaction delighted Leonard, and it also temporarily eased his worries about young Sheldon living in his own home. Mrs. Mary was also very welcoming to Locke and Peggy, especially Locke. Compared to Beverly, she was more optimistic about Locke's ability to take care of little Sheldon at school. During dinner, she repeatedly asked Locke to watch over Sheldon and keep her informed of his progress. After dinner, Locke and Peggy drove back to Fairview. Peggy went upstairs to read, while Julie brought Susan over to visit. "Thank you for your help. Since my divorce from my ex-husband, I've been relying on alimony and my book illustration work for my income. It's not much, but I still have to pay for property taxes, Julie's tuition, insurance, and other expenses. My financial situation has been tough. In 2 years, Julie will be going to college, and I need to prepare for her tuition." "That's okay. Let's see if there's anything we can do." Locke listened, quickly flipping through the tax documents Susan had brought. "We paid some of our taxes this year with a credit card," Julie emphasized, making Susan's expression even more embarrassed. "It's okay, Miss Susan," Locke suddenly asked. "Where do you paint in your house?" Mostly in my room or the living room. Sometimes I even use the dining table because things get a bit messy, and I even have to ask Julie to help me find them." "Great," Locke nodded. "I think you might consider setting aside part of your house as your studio. That way, you can deduct the corresponding tax percentage based on the proportion of your studio space you take up as your home." "What?" Susan was a little confused, bewildered. Julie, on the other hand, was more perceptive and looked at Locke, waiting for further explanation. "So, Susan, how big is your first-floor living room, or your painting studio?" "If it's just the living room, it's about 40 square meters. We can go back and measure the exact size." Julie finally understood Locke's meaning. "Very good," Locke chuckled and continued. "Susan, how do you usually buy your painting materials?" "I usually drive my own car. It's the studio's official car," Locke emphasized. "And your garage is also the studio's garage?" "Yes, it's the studio's official car," Julie nodded with a smile. "And the garage, then," with Locke's reminder, Susan finally realized that she had many tax deductions. If she included these, she could get a substantial tax refund. Now she finally understood why Julie had insisted on dragging her to Locke for tax filing help, and she felt grateful to Locke. "Thank you so much, Locke. I heard Julie wanted me to illustrate a book, and I'm happy to do it for free. You're so kind." The illustration fee is covered by the publisher and included in the book price, so you don't have to. Besides, you just mentioned you need to save for Julie's college tuition. Go back and measure the living room and garage. "Leave these tax documents with me," Locke said with a smile. "Call me when you've measured the living room, and I'll do a detailed calculation for you. You can file your taxes using my template. As for compensation, just treat me to a meal when you have the chance." "Sure." Susan happily shook Locke's hand. "Thank you so much. It's okay. We're all neighbors, and it's only natural to help each other." After watching Susan and Julie leave, Locke returned to his study, glanced at Peggy, who was still reading, and got busy again. In his current situation, he didn't need to bother with filing taxes for others. Even his own taxes were handled by a dedicated accounting team. But Susan lives across the street, and the two families are often seen together. Locke will be living here for the next few years, so it is natural to cultivate good neighborhood relations. Especially since Susan is one of the 4 core housewives of the plot. If he can easily help with her with his ability, it will also be of great help in triggering future quests. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.